divine and mysterious immortality. I start my cultivation by adding points as a butcher. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 801, A Sign of Great Misfortune. Swish. A paper figure flew out from Wei Hong's sleeves, and after landing, it became the size of a normal person. His spiritual sense detected that at the bottom of the pool, there was a figure about 10 feet long lying there. There was no doubt that it must be the monster guarding the dragon scale fruit tree. He did not dare to let his spiritual sense directly detect it, for fear of waking up the monster. Under Wei Hong's control, the paper figure quietly approached the dragon scale fruit tree. He immediately made a gesture with both hands and quickly condensed a giant flame-slashing knife above the pool. The next moment, at the moment when the monster under the pool was awakened by the fluctuation of spiritual power, the giant flame-slashing knife in the air fell fiercely, bringing with it an extremely terrifying momentum. Roar! The monster under the pool roared violently the moment it felt the fluctuation of spiritual power, and then wanted to get out of the water directly. But it collided head-on with the flame-slashing knife, and its figure was blasted to the bottom of the water again before it got out of the water. Roar! A shrill wail. The pool was stirred up completely, and the originally dark green water was dyed dark red. Whoosh! A huge figure suddenly emerged from the water with a shrill sound. Wei Hong looked intently and found that it was a kind of monster he had never seen outside, but the cultivation of this monster was not high, only the second-level middle grade, corresponding to the cultivator in the middle stage of foundation building. After the monster emerged from the water, it immediately looked at Wei Hong furiously. But Wei Hong was too lazy to talk nonsense and didn't want to waste time, so he secretly controlled the paper man to pick the dragon scale fruit while pointing his hand, and a green flying sword suddenly shot out. To deal with such a second-level middle-grade monster, the Big sword is enough. Seeing the flying sword attacking, the monster suddenly sensed Wei Hong's terrifying cultivation. But it was too late to escape at this time, and the Big sword arrived in an instant. Puff! Even though the monster condensed a layer of ice to protect its body, it was still beheaded by the Big sword. Blood spurted 3 feet high. The huge head and the headless body fell into the pool, splashing a lot of water. At this time, the paper man had already handed the 3 dragon scale fruits he had picked to Wei Hong. Then the paper man immediately came to the pool, fished out the body of the monster, cut off all the valuable materials on the monster, and then returned to Wei Hong. Wei Hong put away all the things and walked to the depths of the valley. The reason why he came to this valley was that he wanted to open up a quiet cave in the valley. Encountering the dragon scale fruit and the monster was actually an unexpected gain, so there was no reason to let it go. When he came to the mountain wall deep in the valley, Wei Hong controlled the flying sword and easily dug out a cave. After setting up a formation at the entrance, he walked straight into the cave. The reason why he specially found a secluded place was just to facilitate the deduction and divination. This secret realm is so big, it's not okay to rush in like a headless fly. Wei Hong was very clear in his mind, and naturally he would not do those rash actions. This secret realm is so big. Although the intelligence information he bought from the Xianji Pavilion contains the map explored by the predecessors, it is not necessarily accurate. Moreover, having a map does not mean that he understands the situation of the secret realm, so the best choice at present is to deduce and divination first, and then make a choice. In this way, he can avoid those dangerous places and not let himself fall into danger. At the same time, he can deduce where there are natural materials and treasures suitable for him, avoiding the hardship of running around. As the saying goes, sharpening the knife does not delay the work of chopping wood. As long as all preparations are made, Wei Hong can find what he wants faster, so he can still afford to delay this time. Reaching out from the storage bag and taking out 6 copper coins, Wei Hong secretly activated the Liren Dongwei technique, and then gently threw the copper coins in his hand towards the west, letting the 6 copper coins fall to the ground and scatter instantly. Huh? Great evil in the west? There is also a faint blood light. After seeing the hexagram clearly, Wei Hong was shocked. So he immediately took out a jade slip and immediately checked it with his spiritual sense. After a moment, he opened his eyes and murmured, "I was actually teleported here." After comparing the map recorded in the jade slip, Wei Hong found his current location. The mountain forest he was in at this time was called Xian'an Mountain, and the mountain range farther away was the Bihun Mountain Range, which was the largest mountain range in the Secret Realm, and Cheyenne Mountain was a branch of the Bihun Mountain Range. The terrain here was relatively flat, with mostly mountains and forests rather than high mountains. Most importantly, according to the records of the Cheyenne Pavilion's intelligence, there were no powerful monsters in Cheyenne Mountain, which also made Wei Hong breathe a sigh of relief, secretly glad that he was not teleported to any dangerous place. As for the great danger in the west that he had just divined, it made him very alert. In the west there is the demon abyss, a narrow sky, and the black desert. These three places are all dangerous places specially marked on the map. Could this hexagram be related to those three dangerous places? Wei Hong frowned and pondered secretly, but could not get any results for the time being. In the map, according to the exploration and experience of the predecessors, there are many dangerous places marked on it, including 3 in the west, which inevitably made him connect the 3 dangerous places with a hexagram. Moreover, the entire secret realm is divided into the inner domain and the outer domain. The inner domain is full of dangerous places. In the central area of the secret realm, there are also the most natural treasures and monsters. As for the outer domain, although there are not too many dangerous areas, there are in every direction, and the harvest in the outer domain is definitely not comparable to that in the inner domain. Wei Hong's real goal is still in the inner domain. Although he does not know whether the 3 dangerous places in the west are related to this hexagram for the time being, since the hexagram shows that the west is very dangerous, he will naturally not go west again. He must avoid it if he can. Anyway, there are 3 other directions leading to the inner domain, so he doesn't need to take too much risk. Let's do another divination to see if the 3 dangerous places in the west are really dangerous. With a clear goal in mind, Wei Hong quickly came to the conclusion. Sure enough, the demon abyss is a sign of blood and great danger, and the black desert and the skyline are also extremely dangerous. It seems that these 3 areas must not be set foot on for the time being. After the divination results came out, Wei Hong made a decision in his heart. He had completely given up on the west direction, and he would never approach it unless necessary. The demon abyss, which revealed a strong bloody light, made him feel a sense of fatal crisis. It was obvious that there were either terrifying monsters or some kind of restrictions that were enough to leave no trace of a person. For this reason, he also specially marked the 3 dangerous places in the jade slip. After doing all this, Wei Hong turned to face the east. Chapter 802 Silver Essence. 6 copper coins were thrown down gently and scattered on the ground. Wei Hong frowned when he saw it. Is there a lot of danger in the east? Is there a lot of danger in the secret realm? Faced with such a hexagram, Wei Hong could only sigh. His vigilance was already at its highest level. This secret realm was obviously not a good place. So Wei Hong then simply deduced and divined the north and south directions and all the areas with place names, even the inner area. The final result showed that the west and the east were both very dangerous hexagrams. The several major areas in those 2 directions were full of dangers. The north was slightly better, and there was only one area there with greater danger. The most suitable direction for him to move forward was the south. There were not many dangers in the south, and the several areas in that direction were relatively safe. Obviously, with Wei Hong's strength, he could easily deal with it. Even in the Wanling Mountain in the south, he divined a relatively important opportunity. In addition, most areas in the inner domain are full of dangers, and even most places are extremely dangerous. The hexagrams reveal a strong blood light, which makes Wei Hong secretly alert. This Liren Dongwei technique is really useful. After getting the divination results, Wei Hong was overjoyed and felt that he was very wise to exchange for this deduction method. With this Liren Dongwei technique in hand, he can avoid danger and disaster, avoid all kinds of dangers and disasters, and at the same time find his own opportunities more clearly, which is definitely something that countless cultivators dare not think about. As for the life consumed by deduction and divination, Wei Hong only needs some vitality points to easily replenish it. Thinking of this, he immediately changed his face in a good mood, converged his own breath to the level of the middle stage of foundation building, then walked out of the cave and put away the formation, and flew directly to the south on his sword. He didn't know how big the secret realm was, but since he had already come in, he had to search for more natural treasures as much as possible, so before entering the inner domain, he needed to explore all the way. Flying all the way to the south, after leaving Cheyenne Mountain, he entered the area of Bihun Mountain Range. All he could see were various high mountains, and a river winding along the mountains, with no end in sight. While flying at low altitude, Wei Hong released his spiritual sense to carefully explore, and from time to time he checked the map to see where he was. Soon, he came to the sky above a small basin. Wei Hong suddenly stopped the flying sword, only because he sensed that there was an extremely rich spiritual energy slowly emanating from the basin below, and at the same time there was a very slight and faint fragrance, which made people feel refreshed when they smelled it. Obviously, there must be something unusual below. So he immediately pressed the sword light and flew straight down to the basin below. Before he really got close to the basin, more than 10 sharp earth spikes more than 10 feet long suddenly shot up at him from the basin below. Haha, there really is something good. This clearly means that there is a guardian monster, which means that there must be spiritual medicine of a high grade here. Wei Hong waved his hand, and the misty sword light slashed down, crushing the more than 10 sharp earth spikes directly, without any impact on him. At this time, he had already seen that 2 monsters like giant earthworms quietly emerged from the rocky ground in the center of the basin. The 2 monsters were more than 3 feet long, earthy yellow in color, without feet under their bellies, and had a layer of hard-looking shells on their bodies. On the heads of the 2 monsters, there was a silver-white horn more than 3 feet long. Unicorn earthworm. Wei Hong shouted out the origin of the 2 monsters. This kind of monster is very good at drilling into the ground. Once they drill into the ground, it is difficult to kill this unicorn earthworm unless there are special means. At this time, Wei Hong saw that at the root of a huge rock next to the 2 unicorn earthworms, there was a palm-sized silver Ganoderma lucidum growing. There were some faint silver lines on the surface of this Ganoderma lucidum, and a layer of silver light flowed from time to time on the surface. The faint fragrance he smelled just now obviously came from this Ganoderma lucidum. Haha, silver essence Ganoderma. After seeing the appearance of the Ganoderma lucidum clearly, Wei Hong burst into laughter. He didn't expect that he would encounter a natural treasure that could help with Dan formation so soon. Silver essence Ganoderma is a 2nd-grade top-grade spiritual medicine. Its function is to nourish the soul. When taken with other natural treasures, it can increase the chance of Dan formation. Even if this silver essence Ganoderma can only increase the chance of Dan formation by 1,000th, Wei Hong must take it down. Moreover, he also observed that a layer of cocky light shield appeared around the silver essence Ganoderma, which was obviously a protective measure laid by the 2 unicorn earthworms to prevent any problems with the silver essence Ganoderma. The 2 unicorn earthworms that drilled out from the ground saw that Wei Hong had no intention of retreating, and immediately screamed in anger, then opened their ferocious mouths and spit out at Wei Hong. Puff! 2 balls of yellow mucus emitting a fishy smell bombarded Wei Hong. At the same time, the 2 unicorn earthworms did not stop, but shook their tails at the same time, condensing dozens of sharp earth thorns more than 10 feet long and shooting at Wei Hong again. Obviously, facing a cultivator like Wei Hong who wanted to seize their opportunities, the unicorn earthworms, as monsters, would naturally not give up unless they killed Wei Hong on the spot. Facing the attacks of 2 late-stage foundation-building monsters, Wei Hong was not surprised but laughed and said, "Haha, since you have been encountered by Wei, you deserve to be unlucky." Swish! A golden sword light shot out instantly. At the same time, a black shield and a yellow umbrella blocked Wei Hong's body, blocking the 2 balls of mucus and dozens of earth thorns, but the shield and the yellow umbrella were not damaged at all. Not only that, Wei Hong stretched out his hand and pointed, and a dragon-like green vine broke out of the ground next to the 2 unicorn earthworms, and instantly wrapped around the 2 unicorn earthworms. The golden flying sword arrived in an instant. The unicorn earthworm on the left had not yet reacted. It only felt cold all over, and its shell suddenly thickened 3 times, but it was still useless. The golden flying sword just circled lightly, and the unicorn earthworm was directly cut into 2 pieces, and blood instantly flowed all over the ground. This golden flying sword was the 2nd-level top-grade spiritual weapon obtained from Xiaoming. This flying sword was extremely sharp, and it was even more terrifying in Wei Hong's hands. Even the unicorn earthworm in the late stage of foundation building could not hold on for a moment, and was directly killed on the spot before it could even scream. However, after being cut into 2 pieces, the 2 halves of the unicorn earthworm's body were still twisting on the ground. It was obvious that it was still alive and wanted to drill into the ground. At this time, the dragon green vine had already wrapped around it. Chapter 803, Borrow 3 Heads. Puff. The two pieces of unicorn earthworms that were full of vitality and wanted to burrow into the ground to survive were instantly crushed by the entangled dragon green vines. Blood mixed with light yellow mucus splashed all around, and the fishy smell spread. The unicorn earthworm next to it did not expect that its companion would be killed in just a blink of an eye, and it immediately roared wildly. Roar! The surviving unicorn earthworm roared furiously, and then ore flowed all over its body. Puff! Under Wei Hong's vigilant eyes, the unicorn earthworm actually drilled directly into the ground. Want to leave? Wei Hong shouted in astonishment. The next moment, a golden light pierced straight down at the unicorn earthworm. But after the unicorn earthworm drilled into the ground, it was like a dragon entering the sea. It disappeared without a trace in a short while, without even a trace of breath left. Even the golden flying sword could hardly pose a threat to it, and in the end it could only be called back by Wei Hong. As expected of a monster that is good at drilling into the ground, it ran away if you are not careful. Wei Hong shook his head with a little regret. The unicorn earthworm was obviously quite intelligent. After seeing its companion being easily killed by Wei Hong, it naturally knew that it was no match for him, so it played a trick of making a feint to the east and attacking in the west, and escaped in the blink of an eye. Fortunately, Wei Hong didn't care about it. After all, the really important thing was not the unicorn earthworm. Swish! In a blink of an eye, he came to the side of the silver essence Ganoderma, and then stretched out his hand and pressed it lightly, and the layer of protection on it disappeared directly, exposing the silver essence Ganoderma completely in front of him. Wei Hong took out a small jade shovel and a jade box from the storage bag, and used the jade shovel to gently dig out the silver essence Ganoderma with roots and soil, and then carefully put it into the jade box and put it away, and then he let out a sigh of relief. Not bad, not bad. I didn't expect to have such a harvest not long after entering. It seems that this secret realm is indeed extraordinary. I wonder what the scene in the inner domain is like. Wei Hong was very happy and full of expectations for the inner domain. So he flew south again, ready to continue searching. Just as the result of the deduction and divination, Wei Hong did not encounter any danger in the process of moving forward to the south, and he also gained a lot. Along the way, he picked a lot of first-grade high-quality spiritual flowers and herbs, and also harvested a lot of second-grade middle and low-quality spiritual medicines and fruits. He even got 3 second-grade high-quality spiritual medicines. The guardian monsters encountered during the period, the highest cultivation level was only the late stage of foundation building, which did not pose any threat to him at all. Instead, he was easily killed, allowing him to harvest a lot of vitality points and monster materials again. In this way, Wei Hong can be said to have gained multiple gains. Especially the replenishment of vitality points, which made him quite happy. Originally, his vitality points were almost exhausted, but now he had a chance to replenish them, so he would not miss it. Instead, he needed to kill as many monsters as possible. In this way, he could obtain natural treasures and kill monsters to obtain vitality points and monster materials. It can be said that he killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Such a secret realm is definitely a rare treasure for Wei Hong. Thanks to fellow Taoisting, otherwise I would not have the chance to come in. Wei Hong was quite moved and kept searching along the way. No matter what terrain or environment he encountered, he would go down and use his spiritual sense to explore it. If he could get something, it would be the best. If he didn't get anything, it didn't matter. He would just continue to search forward. Moreover, Wei Hong had a flash of inspiration halfway through. In the process of searching for natural treasures, as long as he found some safe and suitable places for array formations, he would quietly set up 1 or 2 array formations. Wind Flame Dragon Fierce Formation, Illusionary Skynet Formation, Heavenly Capital Ring Thunder Formation, Greenwood Confining Spirit Formation, in addition to the 6 Absolutes Green Thunder Formation, which required 6 paper figures to set up. Wei Hong arranged all the other formations he had learned in several safe places. He had already refined several sets of formation flags for various formations over the past 10 years, and now they came in handy. Wei Hong found that this secret realm was like a real world. He flew all the way and saw mountains, rivers, plains and forests. Except for the lack of people and towns and villages, it was almost exactly the same as the outside world. The further he flew south, the more he found that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth became richer and richer. Obviously, he was slowly approaching the inner domain. Wei Hong was still flying at a low altitude, but his breath was restrained, and his spiritual consciousness was not released. After all, releasing spiritual consciousness consumes a lot of energy, so it is naturally impossible to release spiritual consciousness all the time. However, just as he was about to climb over a high mountain in front of him, 3 young men in black robes suddenly flew out from the side of the mountain. The two sides were more than 100 feet apart. Because he did not release his spiritual sense, Wei Hong did not notice the other side approaching at the first time. It was just that the 3 people happened to fly out from the side of the mountain. The two sides met each other and discovered each other at the same time. Such a change was not expected by Wei Hong, so his speed suddenly slowed down. Wei Hong frowned slightly, thinking whether he should ignore these 3 people. However, the 3 black-robed men opposite him seemed to be cats that smelled fish, and their eyes were full of excitement. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 3 people increased their speed and approached Wei Hong quickly. Huh? Wei Hong frowned. He did not expect to meet 3 guys who did not know how to live or die. He already understood that it was because he had restrained his breath and changed his appearance that the 3 people opposite him mistakenly thought that he was just a low-level foundation-building cultivator, so they had evil intentions. Alice, whatever, you asked for it. Wei Hong sighed secretly, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He had seen that these 3 cultivators were definitely not good people. Their auras were filled with ferocity and a hint of gloom, and they also carried a hint of evil spirit. It was obvious that they had killed many cultivators to become like this. In this case, he naturally did not need to hold back. Haha, fellow Taoist, wait a minute. The 3 of us have something to ask for your help. I hope you will not refuse. Before they really got close, the 3 auras locked onto Wei Hong, and one of them even laughed and tried to hold Wei Hong back with words, waiting for the 3 of them to surround him. Among these 3 people, 2 were in the middle stage of foundation building, and the last one was in the early stage of foundation building. In Wei Hong's eyes, they were just like chickens and pottery dogs. Oh? Then I also want to borrow something from you 3. I wonder if it's okay. Wei Hong responded with a slight smile. The 3 people opposite were stunned when they heard that. They didn't expect Wei Hong to ask to borrow something. This was a bit beyond their expectations, so the man who spoke before laughed and said, Haha, fellow Taoist, why don't you tell me what you want to borrow first? Simple, I just want to borrow your heads. Wei Hong chuckled and pointed, and a golden sword light shot out like a meteor. Chapter 804, Overwhelming. As they were talking, the distance between the 2 sides had already reached within 30 feet. Hearing Wei Hong's casual words, the faces of the 3 monks on the opposite side suddenly changed. In particular, they originally wanted to get close and then go out together to ensure that there was no risk of error. Who knew that Wei Hong would take the initiative, which immediately made the 3 monks feel strongly uneasy. Quick, hurry up. The face of the black-robed man in the middle suddenly became ferocious, and he roared fiercely. Swish. A yellow flying sword flew out instantly, trying to intercept the golden flying sword. The other 2 monks reacted not slow at all, and they even had a tacit understanding with each other. They released flying swords on the left and right, and threw 2 talismans at Wei Hong at the same time. Whoosh! The 2 talismans condensed into a long arrow with a sharp breath and a long sword in the air, and shot towards Wei Hong. The 3 of them attacked as soon as they made a move. Wei Hong was not panicked at all when he saw this, but just a slight sneer hung at the corner of his mouth. He waved his hand lightly, and the black iron flying shield turned into a table-sized shield in front of him. At the same time, the golden flying sword collided directly with the yellow flying sword. Swish! There was an extremely slight crisp sound in the air, and the golden flying sword passed through the interception of the yellow flying sword without any hindrance, leaving only 2 halves of the yellow sword body completely lost their spiritual light, and then fell straight down from mid-air. This scene completely frightened the black-robed man in the middle and made his face pale. But before he could react, the golden flying sword came to the side of the black-robed man, and then the sword light circled lightly, and a big head instantly soared into the sky, and a column of blood sprayed out with it, and the smell of blood immediately spread to the surroundings. The headless corpse fell directly from the flying sword. Ah! This scene immediately frightened the 2 black-robed men next to them and screamed in fear, and their eyes were instantly filled with despair and fear. Bang bang bang. The black iron flying shield released by Wei Hong was shining with spiritual light, easily blocking the attack of the 2 flying swords and 2 talismans. At this moment, the remaining 2 black-robed men looked at Wei Hong as if they were looking at a prehistoric beast. Dao, it's a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding, please spare me, we will leave immediately. Yes, 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 Dao, please spare my life, we can hand over the storage bag, and I hope you will spare my life. The two black-robed men were already frightened by Wei Hong's terrifying strength, and they begged Wei Hong one after another. They had already seen that the golden flying sword was definitely a spiritual weapon of the second grade, upper grade, or above. How could they provoke a cultivator who could drive such a spiritual weapon? At this moment, the two men were already full of regret in their hearts. They secretly hated themselves for being so blind and provoking such a terrifying enemy. But Wei Hong was too lazy to talk nonsense with them. If you want to borrow it, then you have to borrow it. Please go on your way. With a finger, the golden flying sword rushed towards the two black-robed monks on the left and right. Although the two men begged for mercy in despair, they were not without any preparation. However, the layers of protection they cast were like thin paper in front of the golden flying sword and were directly torn into pieces. Puff! Two heads flew into the sky again, accompanied by two streams of bright red blood. At this point, the three robber cultivators who wanted to rob Wei Hong were completely killed. After easily killing the three robber cultivators, Wei Hong sighed and shook his head and said, "It's okay to be ignorant of life and death, but you don't have any backbone." After that, he stepped forward and put away all the storage bags of the three robber cultivators. These three robber cultivators were nothing but chickens and pottery dogs to him. He didn't need to use any spells or talismans at all. Just a second-level top-grade golden yuan sword was enough to make the three robber cultivators powerless to resist, and then they would die obediently. This seemed to be a trivial matter for Wei Hong. After killing the three robber cultivators, he continued to fly south again. At this time, he thought to himself, there are more than 1,000 people participating in this secret realm trip. I don't know how many robber cultivators and blood spirit sect pawns are mixed in. It seems that I need to be more cautious. There may be many cultivators who will think of getting something for nothing. I hope I won't meet these blind people again. Before entering the secret realm in the hall, Wei Hong wanted to use the spirit light treasure mirror to check it out, but there were more than 1,000 foundation building cultivators in the hall, and all kinds of auras were mixed in. Even though he saw that many cultivators were emitting blood, he couldn't recognize the appearance and identity of those people, so he didn't know how many blood spirit sect pawns were among the cultivators who entered the secret realm this time. As for the robber cultivators, it was even simpler. It was obvious that those monks with bad intentions were guest starring. They might be relying on their large numbers or their strong cultivation, but they were too lazy to search for treasures, so they wanted to get something for nothing and wanted to rob other monks to see if they could get the natural treasures directly from other monks. Facing such robber cultivators, Wei Hong would naturally not be polite. As for whether he would encounter more and stronger robber cultivators in the future, he actually had the answer in his mind. Those Xianjiao from the major Jinan families, or disciples of some sects, were mostly arrogant. Once they encountered something they liked, they would not care so much and would definitely rob it directly, and even bullying the weak was the norm. Although this secret realm was large, there were many monks coming in. He might not meet them in this outer domain, but if he entered the inner domain, it would be difficult for him to not meet them even if he wanted to. Humph, just don't provoke me. If you really don't have eyes, don't blame me for being ruthless. Wei Hong sneered secretly in his heart and suddenly increased his speed by 3 points. With his current cultivation level, plus various trump cards and means, he no longer needs to be afraid of any cultivators in the foundation building period. Even if he falls into siege, he is sure that he can escape unscathed. Soon, he threw all those thoughts away. Wei Hong flew all the way to the south, and on the way he kept going to the area below to search for various natural treasures. Fortunately, in the next 2 days, he did not encounter any cultivators again. During this period, he searched many areas and gained a lot, but most of them were second-level middle and lower-grade spiritual flowers and herbs, and some spiritual fruits. Although they are not very valuable to him now, he will not let them go. It is a good choice to take them out, whether to sell them or use them for his own alchemy. But Wei Hong was a little disappointed at this time, frowning secretly and said, "Why are there only some ordinary things, but there is no second natural treasure useful for forming the elixir? Do I need to go directly into the inner domain?" In addition to the silver essence Ganoderma obtained before, he did not get the same grade in the past 2 or 3 days. Chapter 805 9-Leaf Golden Lotus! Exclamation mark. Bihan Mountains. After flying southward for 3 days, Wei Hong entered the middle area of Bihun Mountains. At this time, he was still some distance away from the depths of Bihun Mountains, but the spiritual flowers and herbs growing in this area were not less, and many of them reached the second level upper grade, which made Wei Hong quite satisfied. He was flying in the air with his sword, less than 50 feet from the ground. At a glance, the Bihun Mountains were full of various tall peaks, mixed with hills, slopes, valleys and basins, etc., which seemed quite complicated. Although Wei Hong was flying at a low altitude, he was always cautious and alert, fearing that he would be attacked by some unknown monsters, or besieged by some flying monsters. Calculating the time, it has been 3 days since we entered this secret realm. I don't know where fellow Taoisting is. Wei Hong was not worried about Dingzu's safety, but was a little curious about where they were teleported to. Dingzu was a disciple of Bidangmo, a late giant and cultivator, after all. It was impossible for her to not have several life-saving methods. He was now completely immersed in the search for natural treasures, and he didn't care when to meet Dingzu. However, just as Wei Hong was lost in thought, he was suddenly awakened by a trace of spiritual power fluctuations coming from afar. Huh? Someone is fighting. Wei Hong's eyes instantly became sharp, and he immediately looked up and looked straight ahead. The trace of spiritual power fluctuations just now came from the front, and the distance was not too far. Obviously, there was either a fight or something happened there. Wei Hong's thoughts turned, and he flew slowly to the front without hesitation. Since there was something exciting to watch, he would naturally not miss it. Besides, there might be natural treasures he needed there. If possible, he would definitely grab them. Even if there were no natural treasures, it would not be too late for him to leave calmly at that time. At the same time, he immediately restrained his own breath. For fear of being discovered, Wei Hong did not even release his spiritual consciousness. Instead, he landed directly after reaching 200 feet away, and then ran forward from the forest on the ground. He was like a piece of wood after restraining his breath. Without the spiritual consciousness of the Golden Core stage, it was impossible to detect his existence. Soon, Wei Hong approached the location where the spiritual power fluctuations came from. Rumble. Bang. Bang. Before he could see the situation in front of him clearly, Wei Hong heard bursts of explosions and the bombardment of spells. There were 3 tall mountains around here. At this time, Wei Hong just passed through the foot of 2 mountains. There were large tracts of dense forests around him, and the tall trees were endless. When he quietly passed through the dense forest in front of him, he suddenly felt right in front of him. At this time, what appeared in front of him was a lake with an area of 100 feet wide. The lake water was clear but bottomless. The lake's surface reflected bursts of light and ripples. This lake just appeared at the foot of 3 tall mountains. The terrain was slightly lower, and there were slopes and dense forests beside the lake. If it were placed in the mortal world, it would definitely be a rare scenery. Wei Hong quietly hid his figure behind a big tree, and then slowly saw the scene in front of him. I saw 4 monks flying on swords above the lake at this time, 3 men and 1 woman, all very young, and 2 men had reached the 8th level of foundation building, and the other 2 were at the 7th level of foundation building. They were obviously considered to be people with higher realms among the foundation building monks who entered the secret realm. At this time, the 4 monks were besieging a strange monster in the lake. This monster was crystal clear and exuded a strong and extremely cold air. It had a python head and a lion body, 4 legs under its belly, and a very long tail. The tip of the tail was like an open snake head, and it was half spitting out its tongue. And this monster was covered with ice crystal scales, which seemed to be very hard. The fighting noise that Wei Hong heard just now was obviously caused by the 4 monks besieging the monster. Under the siege of the 4 monks, the ice crystal monster roared continuously. It did not sink to the bottom of the lake when it stepped on the surface. Instead, everything its 4 feet past turned into thin ice, allowing the monster to step on the water as if it were stepping on the ground. Moreover, the monster would occasionally spray cold air at the monks in the air, or condense ice arrows and shoot them out, which barely blocked the siege of the 4 monks, but the situation was already precarious. Seeing the appearance of the monster, Wei Hong frowned and murmured, "What is this? It seems to be an ice-attributed monster, but I have never seen it in the classics." The cultivation of this ice crystal monster has reached a late stage of foundation building. In addition, it is now above the water, and the environment puts it in a favorable position, so it was not killed on the spot. However, under the siege of the 4 monks, The monster still slowly showed a lot of injuries, and the ice crystal scales were also damaged a lot, and some silver-white liquid blood slowly flowed from its body. However, Wei Hong was too lazy to pay attention to the fight in front of him, but quietly scanned the surroundings. These 4 monks will never do useless work. They want to surround and kill this monster. There must be natural treasures here that attract them. Wei Hong knew it very well, so he observed carefully. The next moment, his eyes were attracted by a light golden lotus at the edge of the lake. At the right edge of the lake, there was an area about 10 feet wide. The area was surrounded by a circle of ice crystal fences, and a layer of ice crystal shields was added outside to protect the things inside. In the ice crystal fence, there were 3 palm-sized green lotus leaves on the lake. The 3 lotus leaves looked green and dripping, and they were only less than 2 inches above the lake surface, and seemed to be full of vitality. In the middle of the 3 lotus leaves grew a pale golden lotus. The lotus was the size of a fist and was in full bloom. There was a small lotus pod in the center of the lotus. Around the lotus pod grew a circle of pale golden stamens. Moreover, the lotus had 9 petals, which looked very delicate and attracted Wei Hong's attention. 9-leaf golden lotus. Wei Hong exclaimed secretly, and then he was instantly ecstatic. He didn't expect to encounter a natural treasure like the 9-leaf golden lotus here. The 9-leaf golden lotus was a natural treasure that was even rarer than the 2nd-level top-grade spiritual flower. Although the grade was not up to the 3rd level, its effect was very powerful. It was one of the spiritual objects that foundation-building cultivators wanted to find the most to form a golden pill. Because the petals of the 9-leaf golden lotus could calm the mind and soul, and people could minimize the disturbance of the inner demon when forming a golden pill. The lotus pod in the middle of the 9-leaf golden lotus had the effect of condensing spiritual power, which could help people condense a golden pill faster. With such a natural treasure in front of Wei Hong, how could he not be overjoyed? As long as he could get this 9-leaf golden lotus, his chances of success in forming a pill would be at least 30% higher. Chapter 806. Both sides suffer losses. Haha, I really made the right decision this time. Wei Hong stared at the 9-leaf golden lotus with his eyes fixed on it, and he was extremely happy. At this moment, he had already regarded the 9-leaf golden lotus as his own. Only then did he understand why the 4 monks in the air would besiege the ice crystal monster. It was obvious that they had discovered the existence of the 9-leaf golden lotus and wanted to take it down. However, now that Wei Hong had discovered it, the plans of the 4 of them were doomed to fail. Since this thing is destined to be with me, I will accept it without hesitation. Wei Hong smiled secretly, and he made a decision in his heart in an instant. He first released 3 paper figures from the storage bag, and asked one of the paper figures to slowly lurk in the forest behind the 9-leaf golden lotus and wait quietly. The other 2 paper figures separated to both sides at the same time, ready to fight at any time. Wei Hong held the Jinnate sword in his hand and waited quietly for the opportunity to come. At this time, the 4 monks in the air had obviously used their real means. Not only did they have 4 flying swords flying up and down, but also various talismans were shooting down from time to time. Coupled with a bombardment of spells, the ice crystal monster was now full of injuries all over its body, and its momentum was much weaker than at the beginning. Among the 4 monks, except for a gorgeous woman wearing a red palace skirt, the remaining 3 were dressed differently. One of them was wearing a gorgeous brocade robe, with a handsome face and a face full of arrogance, and his moves were the most fierce. Another one was wearing a white robe, with a tall figure and fair skin like a woman, wearing a crown on his head, and driving a blue flying sword. The last one was wearing a black robe. This person did not wear a crown, and his long hair was just tied lightly with a black ribbon. His face was slightly pale, and he looked as if he was fragile. The 4 monks' attacks were extremely fierce, and they cooperated very well. It was obvious that they had cooperated more than once. The ice crystal monster had gradually lost its ability to resist under their siege. Roar! As if it had foreseen its own fate, the ice crystal monster roared with anger and unwillingness. The next moment, the few remaining ice crystal scales on its body fell off instantly, and then it shot towards the 4 monks in midair at a speed as fast as lightning. HMPH, what a beast, you want to fight to draw. The man in brocade robes saw the desperate action of the ice crystal monster but was full of disdain on his face, but smiled coldly. He stretched out his hand and waved, and a large black umbrella flew out directly, and then swelled up against the wind, and instantly became a foot in size. After the umbrella was opened, it protected the four of them firmly behind it. Clang clang clang. The ice crystal scales hit the umbrella surface and made a very dull sound. Wei Hong's eyes lit up at this time, and he sacrificed the Jinnate sword without hesitation. At the same time, he also threw out more than 10,000 blade talismans and 2 sky spear talismans. Not only that, after throwing out the talismans, Wei Hong immediately pinched his hands together, and the spiritual power in his body surged wildly. The next moment, he summoned 2 dragon green vines behind the 4 monks and whipped them hard on the back. Who is it? Are you looking for death? The moment Wei Hong took action, his breath could no longer be concealed, so he was immediately discovered by the brocade-robed man, who shouted angrily. However, the speed of the Jinnate sword far exceeded the expectations of the 4 monks, not to mention that there was an attack from the ice crystal monster in front as a cover. When the brocade-robed man discovered it, it was already too late, and it was too late to make any response. The Jinnate sword drew a semicircle in the air, bypassed a black umbrella, and appeared directly next to the brocade-robed man. Even though the man in brocade robes reacted quickly and had several protective shields on his body, and even a small shield in front of him, he still failed to block the Jin Yuan sword. Puff! The extremely sharp Jin Yuan sword directly cut off several layers of shields on the man in brocade robes and cut him off in half. Until the moment of his death, the man in brocade robes still kept his right hand reaching into the storage bag, as if he wanted to take out some treasures to fight the enemy, but he had completely lost the opportunity. Blood and 2 pieces of corpses fell straight down from mid-air. This scene instantly frightened the other 3 people so much that their faces turned pale. They had never expected that the man in brocade robes would be killed directly in a single encounter. But before they could react, thousands of dense short blades enveloped the 3 people, and 2 giant war spears were mixed in, which also fell fiercely. Although the remaining 3 monks were panicked at this time, they did not lose their response. Instead, they took out various protective spiritual tools or talismans from their storage bags and immediately sacrificed them. Bang, bang, bang. Rumble. The violent roar spread all around. The 3 monks resisted together, and all the talismans that Wei Hong offered were blocked by them. But at this time, 2 thick green vines like dragons appeared behind them and whipped the 3 people's backs fiercely. Damn it, this person's cultivation is terrifying and we can't fight him. Let's leave quickly. The young man in black robe roared in exasperation at this time, controlling the flying sword to avoid the whipping of the dragon green vines. The next moment, he was about to soar into the sky and flee directly from here. The other 2 were also very straightforward. They all saw the terrifyingness of Wei Hong, so they had no intention of fighting to the death. After avoiding the whipping of the green vines, they all prepared to flee. But how could Wei Hong give them a chance to escape? Go! With a light shout, the Jinnate sword instantly turned the sword body and shot towards the black-robed man. In addition, the 2 paper figures lurking and waiting on both sides also flew up immediately, and controlled a flying sword to slash at the other 2 monks who wanted to escape, and at the same time threw out more than 10 various talismans. In addition, the 2 dragon green vines also entangled again. Under such circumstances, the 3 men in black robes had no way to escape directly. They were restrained by multiple factors, and they might be seriously injured if they were not careful. Naturally, they did not dare to escape at all costs at this time, and could only be stopped with great frustration. Among them, the black-robed man's eyelids were twitching wildly. He had just seen the terrifying power of the Jinnate sword, and how could he dare to face it head-on at this time? So he kept changing his position in the air, while offering a flying sword and throwing out a lot of talismans, just to successfully intercept the Jinnate sword. But no matter whether it was the flying sword of the black-robed man or the talismans he offered, it was useless. It could not stop the Jinnate sword at all, but made the black-robed man have no way to escape. Suppress it for me. At this time, a cold voice suddenly came. The next moment, the black-robed man felt the spiritual power in his body suddenly stagnate. This discovery immediately frightened the black-robed man to death, and his eyes instantly revealed an extremely strong despair and unwillingness. Puff. A sword beheaded him. Chapter 807 Xiaoding, Kill. The head that shot up into the sky made the scene silent for a moment. The next moment, the headless body of the man in black robe fell directly from the flying sword into the lake. Go. The man in white robe completely lost his will to fight, and shouted with grief and anger on his face. Swish. The man took out an ancient jade talisman from his storage bag, and tore it without hesitation. After the jade talisman was torn, it instantly turned into a jade giant hand more than 10 feet long, and then grabbed a dragon green vine and flying sword in front of it fiercely, and at the moment of grabbing, a powerful aura imprisoned the green vine and flying sword in place. Puff! The extremely tough dragon green vine was crushed by the jade giant hand, and the flying sword controlled by the paper man was also directly torn into pieces. After crushing the dragon green vine, the jade giant hand swept across again, and crushed the green vine and flying sword in front of the red-robed woman, and then wanted to escape without looking back. Although the gorgeous woman in red robe was pale, she was not completely panicked. Instead, she threw out a small and exquisite jade ring with her hand, and then fled in the opposite direction of the man in white robe. The two people fled in opposite directions, one in the south and the other in the north. Obviously, they did not lose their minds. Instead, they used their cleverness to the extreme. Even if Wei Hong wanted to chase them, he could only choose one person to chase them, so that the other person's chance of survival would be greatly increased. If they fled together, they would probably die if they were caught. This was also the tacit understanding between the man in white robe and the woman in red robe, and there was no need to say more. But when he saw the two people preparing to escape, Wei Hong just looked at them in surprise. Explode! Wei Hong uttered a word softly. Boom! Before the man in white robe and the woman in red robe could escape, the two paper figures responsible for restraining them instantly activated all the spiritual power stored in their bodies, and then approached the two people at a rapid speed. The next moment, an extremely violent explosion occurred. The white-robed man and the red-robed woman's faces suddenly changed. The power of the paper man's self-explosion was even more terrifying than their full-strength attack. They had no time to escape at this moment. Even if they flew away without caring, they would be affected by the explosion. So the white-robed man and the red-robed woman could only palely take out the defensive spiritual tools and talismans from their storage bags and set up layers of protection in front of themselves. As a result, their speed dropped sharply, and they were enveloped by the explosion the next moment. Go! Wei Hong's eyes were cold, and he pointed again. The genuine sword instantly turned the sword body and shot towards the white-robed man. At the same time, while the two were temporarily restrained in place by the paper man's self-explosion, Wei Hong threw out two more self-explosion talismans and quickly approached the white-robed man and the two. Whoosh! The speed of the genuine sword was amazing, and the white-robed man had already been locked by Wei Hong's consciousness. At this time, there were still two layers of protection in front of the white-robed man that had not been blown up, which also made the white-robed man secretly relieved. But the next moment, his face suddenly changed, and his eyes suddenly burst into despair and horror. No, Taoist friend, spare my life! The white-robed man roared in despair at this moment, and at the same time, he took out several spiritual tools from his storage bag to block in front of him. This was the only response he could make. He only had one jade talisman like the one just now, not to mention that the genital sword came too fast, so he almost couldn't react in time. But under Wei Hong's urging, the genital sword burst out with a terrifying power that the white-robed man could not imagine. I saw a golden light suddenly flashed across, and the spiritual tools in front of the white-robed man were instantly cut into two pieces, and then the two layers of shields were easily torn apart by the golden light like thin paper. Puff! The golden light quickly circled, and the head of the white-robed man was instantly separated from his body. Blood sprayed more than 3 feet high, and the white-robed man kept a trace of despair and unwillingness on his face until his death. In the end, his head and body fell from the flying sword together, just like the black-robed man before. On the other side, two self-destructing talismans suddenly exploded in front of the red-robed woman. Boom! The red-robed woman's cultivation was weaker than the white-robed man. Before she could recover from the power of the paper man's self-destruction, the self-destructing talismans had already arrived, making her look horrified. Buzz! The woman gritted her teeth and sacrificed a green three-legged tripod at the fastest speed. The three-legged tripod instantly swelled up in the wind and turned into a large tripod more than 5 feet high. Then it spun straight and sprinkled a large piece of green light, protecting the red-robed woman firmly. This three-legged tripod was the biggest treasure in the red-robed woman's hand, but she had to take it out to fight the enemy. As soon as the green light formed, the self-destructing talisman came with a bang. Under the horrific power of the self-destructing talisman, the green light shield cast by the big tripod was immediately shaky. At the same time, the big tripod itself was also affected by the explosion. Patterns of flowers, birds, fish and beasts suddenly appeared on the tripod. Those patterns were stimulated by the big tripod and turned into spiritual light to block the front of the tripod. Bang, bang, bang. The spiritual light transformed by the patterns of flowers, birds, fish and beasts shattered one by one, but still barely blocked the aftermath of the explosion of the self-destructing talisman. Even the layer of green light shield was shaky, but in the end it successfully protected the red-robed woman. But before the red-robed woman could relax, she saw Wei Hong appearing not far in front of her with a sneer on his face. This tripod is not bad, I will accept it without hesitation. Wei Hong smiled coldly, then stretched out his hand and swung it. Swish! The Zuanayu ring was instantly sacrificed and shot towards the big tripod above the red-robed woman's head. Bang! Although the cauldron blocked the attack of the self-destructing talisman, its light had dimmed at this time. In addition, the red-robed woman was unable to react in time, so the cauldron was directly knocked away by the Zuanayu ring. The red-robed woman's face changed drastically, and she immediately wanted to pinch the formula to call back the cauldron. This blue cauldron was her last resort. If she lost it, she would really have no hope of survival. But at this moment, Wei Hong coldly uttered a word: suppress. The spiritual power that the red-robed woman had just raised stagnated instantly, and it was not as smooth as before. The next moment, the giant sword had swept over. No, you can't kill me, I am the patriarch of the Jinden Zhou family. Puff. The rest of the red-robed woman's words were all blocked in her throat, and she could never say them all. The big head flew straight into the sky. As it rolled in the air, the fear and resentment on the red-robed woman's face could be clearly seen, and her eyes were tightly open, as if she would not close her eyes in death. After the red-robed woman died, the green tripod turned back into a small tripod, quietly suspended in the air, and the light suddenly shrank. Wei Hong was delighted, and with a wave of his hand, he summoned back the Jinitan sword, Zuanayu ring and the green small tripod, and then put them into the storage bag without hesitation. Chapter 808, Drain the pond to catch all the fish. The sky above the lake was calm again. The ice crystal monster was still alive after the desperate attack, but it could only lie on the lake's surface motionless, with only its last breath left. The nine-leaf golden lotus was not affected at all under the protection of the paper man. Blood fell from the air, dyeing the clear lake water light red. The faint smell of blood spread out and was soon blown away by the breeze in the mountains and forests. In the lake, there were 4 headless corpses and 4 heads floating. Only this scene was very unpleasant. After Wei Hong put away the green small tripod, he took a look at the ice crystal monster, and then killed it with a sword, which was very neat and tidy. He came to the front of the 9-leaf golden lotus from mid-air and looked at it with joy. Haha, good stuff, it is worthy of being a 9-leaf golden lotus, and the appearance alone is very good. After looking at it for a while, Wei Hong laughed happily. After getting this 9-leaf golden lotus, it means that he has taken a few more solid steps on the road to the golden core stage. Next, he only needs to find a few more natural treasures. With his superb Taoist foundation, he will definitely have no problem entering the golden core stage. By then, he will have the capital to settle down in this world of immortal cultivation. Thinking of this, Wei Hong couldn't wait to gently blast through the layer of shield laid by the ice crystal monster, completely exposing the 9-leaf golden lotus inside in front of him. At this moment, he smelled an extremely strong floral fragrance, which made him feel refreshed. After smelling this floral fragrance, he did not dare to neglect it. He immediately took out an ice jade box from the storage bag, gently cut off the 9-leaf golden lotus with his sword, and then directly put it into the ice jade box and kept it well. It was not until the 9-leaf golden lotus was put into the storage bag that Wei Hong relaxed. He looked at the remaining green lotus leaves and murmured softly, "The treasure has been taken, but we cannot exhaust all the resources. I don't know how many years it will take to grow a 9-leaf golden lotus again." After that, he walked towards the ice crystal monster without looking back. This ice crystal monster was a species he had never heard of before, but since this monster was in the late stage of foundation building, the materials on it were naturally valuable, and he would not waste them. So Wei Hong first collected all the valuable materials on the ice crystal monster, and then collected the storage bags and flying swords and spiritual tools on the 4 black-robed men, and then burned the bodies of the 4 men and the monster body into ashes. After doing all this, he immediately flew away from here. Flying in the sky, Wei Hong looked both leisurely and happy. At this time, he gently stroked something in his hand, which was the green tripod he got from the red-robed woman. At this time, this small green tripod was only the size of a fist and looked very delicate. He gently touched it and felt that it was unusual. A second-grade top-grade spiritual weapon. These guys are really wealthy. While stroking the small tripod, Wei Hong laughed secretly. It's just that the woman is really a bit of a waste. This tripod is not a defensive spiritual weapon, but she uses it as a shield. It's a waste. Although he has not really figured out the function of this small green tripod at this time, he can be sure that it is definitely not a defensive spiritual weapon. At the same time, he thought of the jade talisman used by the white-robed man before, and couldn't help but sigh. It's worthy of being a disciple of a major giant family or a major force. Not only is he wealthy, but he also has many trump cards. The jade talisman used by the white-robed man before was obviously a one-time consumable. If it was a talisman that could be used continuously, Wei Hong would be afraid that it would be difficult to stop it. When he thought of such a powerful jade talisman, his heart was also burning, but it was a pity that the jade talisman had been broken. Today's battle also made Wei Hong secretly alert. The 4 black-robed men were naturally strong, and they were definitely one of the strongest among the thousands of foundation-building cultivators. In order to take down the 4 of them, Wei Hong was forced to use some trump cards this time, otherwise it would not be so easy to kill the 4 easily. However, for him, the 4 cultivators were still not good enough. Even if they had more powerful trump cards, they were not enough to stop Wei Hong. He still had many trump cards in his hand. As for the storage bags of the 4 cultivators, Wei Hong only checked them hastily. After finding that there were no valuable treasures, he temporarily put away all the rest of the things and planned to sort them out after leaving the secret realm. Then he flew south for about half a day, then slowed down and began to check the map. Well, this place is deep in the Bihan Mountains, and it's only a few days away from entering the inner domain. You can basically see the inner domain after crossing the Bihan Mountains, but the danger level of the inner domain is far greater than that of the outer domain. It's best to be fully prepared and do some divination before entering the inner domain. I don't know where fellow Taoisting is now. We should be able to meet in the inner domain. Wei Hong's mind quickly flashed a few thoughts, and he had already determined his position. This is the depths of the Bihan Mountains. After crossing the Bihan Mountains, he can almost enter the inner domain. There should be a lot of good things waiting for him in the depths of the Bihan Mountains, and he must search them carefully. In the half-day of rushing on the road, Wei Hong actually saw the traces of several waves of cultivators from afar, but they were full of vigilance and alertness to each other, and avoided each other from a distance, and had no intention of approaching each other to say hello. As for Dingzhu, he hadn't seen Dingzhu's traces in the past few days, but he didn't worry at all, because even if he couldn't meet Dingzhu in the outer domain, they would definitely meet after entering the inner domain. The scope of the inner domain is much smaller than that of the outer domain, but the natural treasures and guardian monsters in it are not comparable to those in the outer domain. The same danger will become more intense. For many cultivators, if they are not careful, they may die. Wei Hong didn't worry about these things at all, because he must enter the inner domain, and he must search the inner domain carefully to find all the natural treasures he needs. I hope the inner domain will not disappoint me. Wei Hong's eyes flashed with a gleam of light. He looked at the Bihan Mountains below, which were full of various landforms, smiled lightly and lowered the flight altitude. After he entered the depths of the Bihan Mountains, he could naturally sense that the aura of the monsters in this area was indeed much stronger, which also meant that the natural treasures grown here were more precious. He was ready to spend a few days searching carefully. Now I have obtained 2 natural treasures that are helpful for dam formation. I hope I can find more next time. With this idea in mind, Wei Hong plunged into the mountains. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 809, Help, Reward. Deep in the Bihan Mountains. The Bihan Mountains are very vast, and the area deep in the mountains is not small. Wei Hong has been searching along the south for the past 2 days, but he has only searched a small area. However, his harvest is not small. Some first-level spiritual flowers and herbs can be seen everywhere in the depths of the Bihan Mountains. Wei Hong has long looked down on these things, and instead concentrated on searching for spiritual medicines above the second level. In the past 2 days, he has picked 7 or 8 plants. However, he has never encountered the natural treasures that are helpful for forming the elixir. However, Wei Hong was not disappointed. He knew that there must be no shortage of natural treasures in this Xingqian's secret realm. Even if he can't find them now, he may be able to find them easily after entering the inner domain. On this day, he kept flying at a low altitude like the previous 2 days, constantly searching back and forth over the mountains, and occasionally released his spiritual sense to explore, or occasionally went deep into the mountains and forests below to search for them personally. In areas where natural treasures are located, the concentration of spiritual energy is generally more abundant than in other areas, and some strange fragrances are also emitted, so it is not difficult to find them. At this time, Wei Hong was flying over a vast forest. The forest was full of giant trees. Each tree reached a height of dozens of feet, and the diameter reached about 10 feet. Moreover, the crowns of these giant trees were extremely dense, just like huge umbrellas, extending to a very wide distance in all directions, and also covering the ground below tightly. Even if Wei Hong was flying at a low altitude at this time, it was difficult to see the situation on the ground with the naked eye. It is worthy of being a secret realm. Not only is the spiritual energy of heaven and earth extremely rich, but there are no natural disasters or man-made disasters. I don't know how long the giant trees here have grown, but they have grown to such an exaggerated extent. Looking at the giant trees below, Wei Hong couldn't help but sigh. Compared with the huge crowns of those giant trees, he seemed very small at this time. This also made him full of expectations for this dense forest, hoping to find some natural materials and treasures that satisfied him. Wei Hong slowed down his speed and searched carefully with his spiritual sense. After a moment, he thought about it and prepared to go deeper into the dense forest below for a more direct search. But before he could make any move, a violent roar suddenly erupted from the ground thousands of feet ahead. Boom! Whoosh! Flames burst out and the roar resounded throughout the forest. The next moment, several powerful auras emerged, and then a blue sword light suddenly soared into the sky and flew wildly in the direction of Wei Hong. This change immediately made Wei Hong's expression change slightly, and his brows furrowed. Especially when he saw that the blue sword light was flying towards him, he cursed inwardly. He had not yet figured out what was going on, so he naturally would not rashly contact these people of unknown identity. So Wei Hong was ready to step aside and let the blue sword light leave. But just as he made a move, 3 more sword lights immediately soared into the sky in the explosion area, and then they chased a blue sword light frantically with a fierce momentum, as if they would not give up until they achieved their goal. In this way, Wei Hong would not rashly get involved in other people's troubles, so he flew away in another direction without hesitation, ready to stay out of the trouble. But before he flew far, the cultivator on the blue flying sword had already seen Wei Hong's existence, and then turned around and followed Wei Hong, while shouting, "Dao Ao, help me, as long as you can save my life, I will definitely repay you. Damn it, you are still pestering me." The cry for help from the female cultivator who was fleeing not only did not move Wei Hong, but made his face look extremely ugly. This kind of attitude of wanting to drag others into the water without caring about anything, and even wanting to use Wei Hong as a scapegoat, immediately made him extremely disgusted, and his impression of the female cultivator suddenly became extremely bad. At this time, Wei Hong had also seen that the female cultivator seemed to have some damage on her body, and blood was oozing from the corners of her mouth. Her breath was slightly weak, and she looked a little embarrassed, as if she was seriously injured. The 3 sword lights behind were even faster, and were now rapidly approaching the woman. Obviously, the 3 cultivators behind were people who had bad intentions towards the woman, either wanting to rob and kill her, or wanting to get something from her, otherwise they would not have chased her so aggressively. Wei Hong only took a glance and roughly deduced a general situation. All 3 are late-stage foundation building cultivators. 1 is at the 9th level of foundation building, and 2 are at the 8th level of foundation building. Although he did not see the appearance of the 3 cultivators behind him clearly at this time, from the aura they exuded, Wei Hong could easily sense the cultivation level of the 3 people, and he did not want to be contaminated by them at all. So he ignored the female cultivator's call for help and turned around again to get out of this trouble. The 3 cultivators behind them also saw Wei Hong, the troublemaker who suddenly appeared. However, they found that Wei Hong seemed to have no intention of opposing them. Instead, he turned around and flew away. So their faces relaxed a little. One of them even shouted fiercely, "Bitch, you will definitely not be able to escape today. You might as well surrender obediently. Maybe this young master can spare your life." The three cultivators were aggressive. Not only were their cultivation stronger, but their speed was also much faster. They approached the female cultivator in the blink of an eye. The female cultivator was already injured. Facing the pursuit of three late-stage foundation-building cultivators, there was absolutely no chance of escape. Wei Hong watched coldly and was completely indifferent to the life and death of the woman. It was best not to provoke the enemy, especially when there was no benefit or profit. It was not his style to go against three late-stage foundation-building cultivators for a mere cry for help. What's more, he was quite displeased with the woman's behavior just now, so he seemed extremely indifferent at this time. Wei Hong's statement immediately made the female cultivator's face turn pale, especially when she turned around and saw three cultivators approaching quickly. Her eyes were instantly filled with despair, as if she knew that she was doomed this time. But at this time, the female cultivator seemed quite unwilling, and her eyes became firm. She gritted her teeth, followed Wei Hong and turned around, and shouted to Wei Hong again, "Dao, as long as you can save my life, I am willing to offer a fengling flower. This flower is helpful for forming pills, and it is rare even in this secret realm. I hope Dao can lend a hand." Obviously, the female cultivator also knew that her behavior just now had displeased Wei Hong, and there was no benefit, so he would not help her, so she could only take out her gains just now, hoping to impress Wei Hong. Wei Hong, who was about to leave quickly, subconsciously slowed down the speed of the flying sword when he heard this. He knew that this trouble might be inevitable. Chapter 810, Complete Destruction of Soul and Spirit. Alice. Wei Hong sighed helplessly. His thoughts were completely changed by the words of the female cultivator. He didn't expect that the treasure he had been searching for many days would appear in such a way. However, Wei Hong was also a very decisive person. After he had made up his mind, he no longer hesitated. So he slowed down and shouted to the woman in a deep voice, "Give me the thing immediately. After you get the thing, I will save your life. If you don't agree, I will turn around and leave, and then take it from those three people." After these words came out, the woman hesitated. She saw Wei Hong's determination and knew that if she didn't hand over the fengling hu immediately, Wei Hong would definitely turn around and leave without hesitation, but she was worried that Wei Hong would turn his face and not recognize her after getting the thing. But there was also a threat in Wei Hong's words. As long as he was strong enough, he could indeed wait for the woman to be killed and then snatch the fengling hu from the three cultivators behind. In this way, the woman would have to give up her life in vain. In order to prove his confidence, Wei Hong instantly showed all his restrained aura. Buzz! A more powerful aura than the three late-stage foundation-building cultivators behind him instantly rose, and at the same time, Wei Hong's face became extremely cold. He stared at the female cultivator, and seeing that she was still hesitating, he smiled coldly and turned away without hesitation. The female cultivator's face changed again and again, but at this time she had no choice but to grit her teeth and throw out a jade box, and then secretly said, "Okay, give it to you." Whoosh! The jade box instantly flew towards Wei Hong. The three cultivators behind saw this scene, and their expressions suddenly became ferocious. They didn't expect that such an accident and change would happen to the thing they thought they were sure to get, which also made the three cultivators extremely angry. "Stop. Boy, you are looking for death. Leave the jade box, otherwise I will make you die." The three people shouted angrily, trying to intimidate Wei Hong. But Wei Hong would not pay attention to them. Most of his mind was attracted by the jade box at this time. Swish! The spiritual power turned into a big hand and instantly grabbed the jade box back. He gently opened a gap, probed inside with his spiritual consciousness for a moment, and then covered the jade box with great joy and put it into the storage bag. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! At this time, the female cultivator and the three casual cultivators behind him caught up at the same time. The female cultivator approached Wei Hong with a worried and cautious look, while the three cultivators surrounded Wei Hong and the other two in the middle with a look of anger and shock. They didn't expect that Wei Hong would dare to be so bold. Not only did he ignore them, but he also put the jade box away in a big way, which made the eyes of the three cultivators become cold. "How dare you steal my things?" Among the three cultivators, the young man with the highest cultivation level looked at Wei Hong with a cold face. This man was wearing a gorgeous blue robe, handsome, with his hair tied up in a crown, but he looked arrogant and cold, and his eyes were full of murderous intent and anger when he looked at Wei Hong. The man on his left looked ordinary, with his cultivation reaching the 8th level of foundation building. He was wearing a green robe, with 2 exquisite jade pendants tied around his waist, and holding a white flying sword in his hand, staring at Wei Hong with a fierce look. The last man was a rough man with a square face. He didn't look very old, but his skin was rough, and his cheeks were covered with beards. His hair was simply tied up with a bandage. He was looking at Wei Hong with a ferocious face, as if he was going to torture him to death in the next moment. On the contrary, Wei Hong seemed calm and composed. He did not react to the approach of the female cultivator next to him. Instead, he said to the handsome young man in a leisurely manner, "Don't worry, fellow Taoist. This thing is meant for me. Since it has come into my hands, it means that it is not meant for you three. In this case, you three might as well leave. We don't have to hurt the relationship. What do you think?" Faced with a siege of 3 late foundation building cultivators, Wei Hong's reaction at this moment surprised everyone present. Even the female cultivator next to him did not expect Wei Hong to be so courageous, and she felt a little relieved inexplicably. However, the blue-robed man laughed in anger after hearing Wei Hong's words. "Haha, retreat just like that? Just relying on you alone? Taoist friend, you are really funny. When this young master kills you, won't the phoenix spirit flower be destined for me? Don't be long-winded. I just want to ask you one question. Do you want to hand over this phoenix spirit flower?" After that, the 3 cultivators surrounded him and locked Wei Hong with their auras, as if they would burst into action at the next moment. Their posture was also to intimidate Wei Hong. "Alice." Wei Hong sighed softly, his face slightly helpless. Although he didn't know the man in front of him, he had seen him before entering the secret realm. He knew that this person was an outstanding genius from the Huangfu family of the Jinden family. It seemed that his name was Huangfu Ming. Dingzhu also briefly introduced him once. If it was not necessary, he really didn't want to fight with these geniuses from the Jinden family. But handing over the phoenix spirit flower was absolutely impossible, so Wei Hong knew that today's battle was inevitable. However, Huangfu Ming saw Wei Hong sighing helplessly, but thought he was scared, and a sneer appeared on his face, and at this time he became more threatening. Since the 3 Taoist friends are unwilling to retreat, then stay. Seeing that the other party was getting closer and closer, Wei Hong smiled coldly. Before the other party really got close, he took the lead without hesitation. Whoosh! The Jinnate sword shot out instantly and stabbed directly at Huangfu Ming. At the same time, Wei Hong stretched out his hand and swung more than 10 talismans each towards the other 2, and at the same time sacrificed the Zuanai ring. After doing this, he moved his body and flew towards the rough man with the weakest cultivation. Seeing that Wei Hong dared to take the initiative, Huangfu Ming was immediately shocked and sneered. "How dare you? Since you are looking for death, it is not my fault. Kill me." Swish! A red flying sword was also sacrificed to Huangfu Ming, and it was entangled with a Jinnate sword. At this time, Huangfu Ming took out a dark shield from his storage bag, and after offering it, he firmly protected himself. Then he took out a 9-section bone whip that was more than 10 feet long, and swung it towards Wei Hong fiercely. Snap! The 9-section bone whip swelled in the wind, and instantly became dozens of feet long, and swung it in the air with a blast, and swung it behind Wei Hong with a terrifying momentum. On the other side, the man in the green robe saw Wei Hong throw out more than 10 talismans. He just smiled coldly, and also shot out more than 10 talismans, and condensed several shields in front of him, then stretched out his hand and pointed, and the white flying sword in his hand rushed towards Wei Hong. The rough man was naturally unwilling to fall behind. Seeing that Wei Hong dared to approach him, he immediately grinned, and a layer of extremely heavy yellow armor appeared on his body. With a bloodthirsty look on his face, he also rushed towards Wei Hong. In an instant, the 3 monks formed a siege against Wei Hong. Chapter 811 Special Spiritual Weapon. The situation changed instantly. The beautiful female cultivator did not expect Wei Hong to be so powerful and dared to take the initiative to attack, but after seeing the momentum of the other 3 cultivators, she was frightened and her face turned pale. She hurriedly slapped a few defensive talismans on her body, and then hurriedly rushed down the mountain forest, trying to avoid the front battlefield. After all, she was still skeptical about whether Wei Hong could stop Huangfu Ming and the other 2. Wei Hong was not afraid of the tacit siege of Huang Fuming and the other two. He seemed to be flying towards the rough man, but he moved sideways in the middle of the way, and instantly broke away from the encirclement of Huang Fuming and the other three. Then he waved his hand and released a black iron flying shield and the yellow umbrella. At this time, various offensives broke out completely. First, Wei Hong's Jindan sword and the red flying sword sacrificed by Huang Fuming collided fiercely. With a click, Huang Fuming's red flying sword was cut into a small gap, and then it was bounced out with a great loss of spirituality. The next moment, the Jinyuan sword stabbed straight at Huang Fuming. However, the dark shield that Huang Fuming sacrificed was obviously not an ordinary item. It protected it tightly. Even the Jinyuan sword could not pierce the defense of the dark shield and directly surrounded Huang Fuming to contain him. The second thing was the more than 20 talismans that Wei Hong threw out. He threw more than 10 talismans at each of the other two people. Facing these talismans, the green-robed man and the rough man had different responses, but they were both full of confidence in their defense. Boom! The terrible and strong explosion instantly exploded in front of the green-robed man and the rough man. After the green-robed man and the rough man realized the terrifying power of the explosion, their faces changed drastically and they hurriedly evacuated. However, the power of the explosion was extremely fast and the green-robed man and the two men could not avoid it at all. Puff! Under the terrible power of the explosion, the talismans thrown by the green-robed man were directly blasted into ashes. The power was not yet exerted and it was already gone. At the same time, the several layers of shields on the green-robed man were directly torn apart, and the green-robed man who was unable to react was instantly enveloped by the aftermath of the explosion. Puff! Exclamation mark. The green-robed man spat out a large mouthful of blood without the shield. His face turned pale and his breath became weak. Even the green robe on his body was torn apart, revealing a silver-white inner armor. Only then did the green-robed man barely escape the range of the explosion. On the other side, the burly man relied on the yellow armor on his body and did not defend himself anymore. He just retreated frantically. But he did not expect that the explosion power of the talismans was so fierce that even his yellow armor could not withstand it. In just a breath of time, the yellow armor was directly shattered under the bombardment of the terrifying explosion, and the burly man was also violently shaken away. Puff! Exclamation mark. The man spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood in midair, and the rough man's face turned pale, his eyes full of disbelief. He didn't expect that just a few talismans could break his armor shield. What they didn't know was that Wei Hong had mixed 2 self-destructing talismans into those talismans, but the 2 men in green robes were completely unaware of it, so they were directly injured by the self-destructing talismans. As for the white flying sword offered by the man in green robes, it was naturally easily blocked by Wei Hong. However, the white bone 9-section whip in Huang Fuming's hand was a special spiritual weapon of the 2nd level top grade. Before he really got close, Wei Hong sensed the power of the 9-section whip. But he was not afraid at all, just quickly pinched his hands, and 2 thick green vines like dragons broke out of the ground, and then grew into terrifying green vines hundreds of feet long, and at the same time whipped the white bone 9-section whip fiercely. Bang! A thunderous roar was heard, and the tails of the 2 indestructible yet extremely flexible dragon green vines were directly shattered by the white bone 9-section whip, but they also successfully blocked the attack of the 9-section whip, allowing Wei Hong to gain some distance. At this time, the man in green robe immediately roared in anger, "Huang Fu Xiao, quickly take action, this person is very powerful, and you must not delay any longer." Wei Hong just threw out more than 10 talismans and caused serious injuries to the man in green robe and the rough man, and resolved the siege of the 3 of them in one encounter, which made the man in green robe feel a little uneasy. The rough man was even more direct. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and then ignored the injury and rushed towards Wei Hong again with a ferocious face, wanting to fight in close combat. Huang Fuming knew that he had encountered a tough guy. His face changed slightly, and he immediately took a deep breath, then suddenly urged the spiritual power in his body, swung the white bone 9-section whip and whipped Wei Hong again. Huang Fuming did not give up, and took out a pure white round bead from the storage bag. After offering the round bead flew straight towards Wei Hong. The man in green robe first stuffed a pill into his mouth, and after swallowing it, he looked at Wei Hong with a sinister face, then gritted his teeth and took out a black flying knife that exuded a strong yin energy. The man in green robe used the black flying knife to cut his palm hard, and then the blood that flowed out was instantly absorbed by the black flying knife. After absorbing a lot of blood, the black flying knife actually turned a trace of blood red. The man in green robe stretched out his hand and pointed, and the flying knife that exuded a strong yin energy slashed towards Wei Hong. Obviously, this is an evil flying knife that is not inferior to the second-level top-grade spiritual weapon. The three people formed a siege again, and they tacitly surrounded Wei Hong again. Wei Hong's face was solemn, and he immediately responded. He first took out a banner from the storage bag. The banner was as black as ink, and there were many ghost faces engraved on both sides. The yin energy it exuded was even more terrifying than that black flying knife. This is naturally the 10,000 Souls banner that absorbed a large number of foundation-building ghosts. Wei Hong shook the 10,000 Souls banner that had grown into a size of 10 feet in the wind. In an instant, dozens of terrifying ghosts emerged from the 10,000 Souls banner, and then whistled towards the man in green robes, bringing up rolling dark clouds. This scene immediately changed the expressions of the three men in green robes. The eyes they looked at Wei Hong also became very fearful. The man in green robes was even more terrified. He didn't expect Wei Hong to take out a more terrifying 10,000 Souls banner. He saw dozens of terrifying ghosts flying towards him, and his face turned pale with fear. Not only that, Wei Hong looked at the burly man rushing at him, but just smiled coldly, waved his hand, and 4 silver corpses emerged, and then rushed towards the burly man fearlessly. The burly man suddenly changed color, and dared not continue to rush forward. He could only stop suddenly, and then he was surrounded by 4 silver corpses in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the siege of Huang Fuming and the other 2 was broken again. Chapter 812. The trump card is played again. Swish. Under Wei Hong's control, the genuine sword no longer circled Huang Fuming, but turned the sword at an incredibly fast speed and slashed at the white round bead. At the same time, he threw 2 self-destructing talismans at the black flying knife. Huang Fuming's face changed slightly. How could he not see that Wei Hong was not only powerful, but also had many methods that far exceeded their expectations, especially the appearance of the 10,000 Souls banner and the 4 silver corpses, which instantly made the 3 of them want to retreat. He immediately made a gesture with both hands, controlling the white round bead to emit a chilling cold air, trying to prevent the genuine sword from approaching, and also wanted to use this cold air to stop Wei Hong. However, the speed of the genuine sword was far faster than that of the white round bead, and even before the white bone 9-section whip was whipped over, it had already slashed at the white round bead. Snap! The white round bead was instantly cut in half, and the cold air was overflowing. At this time, Wei Hong threw his hand again, and 2 self-destructing talismans suddenly shot out. Boom! When the 9-section white bone whip came over, the 2 self-destructing talismans happened to explode completely. A thunderous roar came, and under the terrifying explosion power of the self-destructing talisman, the tail of the 9-section white bone whip was instantly blown back, and at the same time, the 3 sections of the bone whip behind were covered with traces of black marks, and the spirituality was lost a lot at once. Before Huang Fuming had time to feel distressed, he heard Wei Hong spit out a word coldly: suppress. The spiritual power in Huang Fuming's body stagnated for a moment, and the spell he wanted to cast was directly ineffective. At this moment, the genuine sword shot over again, and Wei Hong quickly approached Huang Fuming, obviously intending to get rid of Huang Fuming, the great enemy, first. As for the green-robed man and the rough man, they could only barely protect themselves under the siege of dozens of foundation-building ghosts and 4 silver corpses, and that was when all means were used, otherwise they would have been dead. Whether it was the dozens of foundation-building ghosts or the 4 silver corpses, they were all fearless and not worried about getting hurt. Under the crazy siege, the green-robed man and the rough man gradually couldn't hold on. This was Wei Hong's second trump card. How could it be so easy to deal with? Therefore, Wei Hong didn't need to look at the green-robed man and the rough man at this time. He only needed to deal with Huang Fuming, and the remaining 2 were just meat on the chopping board, unable to escape at all. It was even good enough for them to keep their lives under the siege of the ghosts and silver corpses. Wei Hong quickly approached Huang Fuming, and Huang Fuming broke the seal of the kingpin sealing technique with a solemn expression, and the spiritual power in his body became smooth again, and then the dark shield outside his body blocked the genuine sword again. Before Huang Fuming could cast a spell again, Wei Hong had already come within 50 feet of him. At this time, Wei Hong immediately cast the spell that he had prepared for a long time. Two dragon-like green vines whipped Huang Fuming again, and hundreds of short blades appeared in the air and chopped down like raindrops. Ding ding ding. The dark shield became larger again, blocking all the short blades. The short blades hit the shield and made a crisp sound. Huang Fuming also waved the white bone 9-section whip again, entangled the two dragon-like green vines tightly, preventing them from getting close, but his 9-section whip was also restrained. Under Wei Hong's control, the giant sword kept flying around Huang Fuming, gradually making the dark shield a little stretched. Suppress. At this time, Wei Hong had come within 10 feet of Huang Fuming. The kingpin sealing technique was used again, causing the spiritual power in Huang Fuming's body to stagnate for a moment. As a result, the operation of the dark shield also had a loophole, and the giant sword took the opportunity to pierce straight in. Ling. However, the giant sword was still blocked by a palm-sized golden seal, and it was bounced out after a crisp sound. Huang Fuming was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. If he hadn't used his spiritual power to activate the human golden seal that had been in his arms at the last moment, he might have been cut into 2 pieces by now. Therefore, Huang Fuming's eyes were full of resentment and strong murderous intent when he looked at Wei Hong at this moment. Okay, you forced me to do this. Huang Fuming sneered in anger, and his expression gradually became crazy. At this time, he had already seen that Wei Hong's strength was much more terrifying than his, especially at this time. The green-robed man and the rough man were entangled and unable to escape. If he did not repel Wei Hong, it would be impossible for him to escape. Therefore, in this predicament, Huang Fuming had to choose to fight desperately. Huang Fuming did not say any more nonsense, but frantically urged the spiritual power in his body. The human golden seal instantly swelled against the wind and turned directly into a size of several feet, like a small mountain, and exuded a terrible breath. Then, under Huang Fuming's control, it was pressed down towards Wei Hong fiercely. Buzz! Before it was really pressed down, waves were set off in the air, and the terrifying momentum made Wei Hong change color. Obviously, this should be Huang Fuming's most powerful trump card. As expected of an outstanding genius of the Jinden family, his means and strength are not comparable to those of ordinary cultivators. Wei Hong sighed secretly, and naturally saw that the golden seal was not simple. The aura emitted by the human golden seal was even stronger than that of the second-level top-grade spiritual weapon. This should be the treasure given to Huang Fuming by the Huangfu family for self-defense. If it were an ordinary cultivator, he would probably be overturned by him. However, Wei Hong only frowned, watching the huge golden seal pressing down in the air. He threw out 5 self-destructing talismans without hesitation, and then quickly approached Huang Fuming in a flash. Boom! The terrifying explosion sounded with bursts of roars. The momentum of the huge golden seal pressing down was also completely intercepted by the terrifying power of the explosion, and waves of shock waves continued to erupt, lifting the huge golden seal that was pressing down into the air, and it could not pose any threat to Wei Hong. You must know that the self-destructing talisman is one of Wei Hong's trump cards. He has stored no less than hundreds of them over the years. The power of each self-destructing talisman is extremely terrifying. At this time, the 5 pieces exploded together, and even the huge golden seal could not resist it. Huang Fuming was already dumbfounded at this moment. He did not expect that his offering of the human golden seal would not work. At this time, Wei Hong actually came within 2 feet of Huang Fuming. Huang Fuming was already pinned down and could not get away. Seeing Wei Hong suddenly appear, he was even more frightened and his face turned pale. But before he could react, Wei Hong's right hand suddenly slashed at him. Puff! A huge sword light about 10 feet long slashed down with Wei Hong's right hand. Even though the dark shield blocked it in time, it failed to block the sword light this time and was directly cut. Puff! Huang Fuming, who was unable to react in time, was instantly cut into 2 pieces, and blood spurted out. Chapter 813 Blood Curse. The smell of blood filled the air. When Huang Fuming was cut into 2 pieces and completely lost his life, the black shield and the 9-section white bone whip and other spiritual weapons he used also lost control and fell straight down from the air along with the 2 halves of his body. Wei Hong breathed a sigh of relief. After using many trump cards, he finally succeeded in completely killing the Xianjiao of the Huangfu family. That is, if it were any other late-stage foundation-building cultivator, he might have been solved by Huang Fuming long ago. Ordinary cultivators of the same level simply had little resistance in front of Huang Fuming. But just when Wei Hong was slightly relaxed, something strange happened. Whoosh! From the two halves of Huang Fuming's body that had just fallen, an unusually bright red light emerged. This blood-red light was full of weirdness and mystery. After emerging from Huang Fuming's body, it seemed to have directly identified Wei Hong and flew straight towards him at an extremely fast speed. Wei Hong was shocked instantly. He didn't expect that Huang Fuming could still launch an attack after his death. He thought it was some strange magic, so he quickly raised the green sword shield and spiritual shield to block the blood-red light. But the blood-red light was very strange. Not only was it extremely fast, but it also completely ignored the 2 layers of shields laid by Wei Hong. It actually drilled into his body at once, and disappeared instantly after drilling into his body. Wei Hong's face suddenly changed. He didn't expect this result at all. He never thought that he was so careful but still got tricked. This immediately made him feel a little uneasy. Damn, what is that? He immediately used his spiritual power to carefully check his whole body, but still didn't find anything abnormal. There was no injury on his body, nor any discomfort. It seemed that the blood-red light had never appeared. It was extremely weird. Wei Hong's face was extremely ugly at this time, and his eyes were as cold as a knife. Looking at the 2 halves of Huang Fuming's body falling straight down, he suddenly controlled the Jinnate sword to completely crush the 2 halves of the body. Huh? After venting his anger, Wei Hong let out a long sigh of relief, and his face slowly returned to normal. Then he thought to himself, that red light should not be a spell, but a curse or a tracking mark. It is very likely unique to the Huangfu family. I have to ask the female cultivator just now. As for now, let's deal with those 2 first. Wei Hong's eyes were cold, and he looked coldly at the 2 men in green robes who were in trouble at this time. Although the 2 men in green robes were entangled by dozens of foundation-building ghosts and 4 silver corpses, and were slowly falling into a state of exhaustion, they were still very concerned about Huang Fuming's life and death, and saw the scene of Huang Fuming being beheaded at the first time. Young Master Huang Fu! The green-robed man cried out in surprise, and then he screamed in despair, Wen Xiao, fight as hard as you can, it will be too late if you don't fight. Seeing Wei Hong flying towards them with a cold look in his eyes, the green-robed man turned pale. The black flying knife he had sacrificed before was completely useless under the siege of dozens of foundation-building ghosts. It could only be restrained around and could not pose any threat to Wei Hong at all. The green-robed man gritted his teeth and took out 2 thumb-sized bullets from his storage bag. The 2 bullets were green in color, with some mysterious patterns on the surface. They looked ordinary, with no abnormality and inconspicuous. But when the green-robed man held the 2 green bullets in his hands, his face was unusually solemn. There was still some hesitation in his eyes at this time, as if he was struggling whether to use the 2 green bullets. The 2 bullets were the famous green flame demon fire thunder in the foundation building period. This is a one-time consumable item, but it is extremely powerful and has a layer of blue flame attached to it. It is a terrible flame that even a late-stage foundation building cultivator would not want to be stained with. And these 2 blue flame magic fire thunders are the ultimate means of the green-robed man. However, the green-robed man saw that Wei Hong was approaching quickly. If he didn't make a decision, he might really stay here forever. So the green-robed man gritted his teeth, his eyes became unusually firm, and his face was extremely solemn. The green-robed man didn't say anything, but decisively threw the 2 blue projectiles directly at the ghosts around him. The next moment, the green-robed man took out several talismans from his storage bag and tore them directly, forming several layers of shields in front of him, and he himself retreated madly without caring. Boom! Before Wei Hong really got close, an extremely violent explosion full of brutality and terrifying high temperature sounded, and a large piece of blue flame quickly spread in the air. Crash! Wei Hong's face changed, and he immediately stopped, then controlled those foundation-building ghosts to retreat frantically, not daring to get even a little bit of it. However, the green-robed man threw out the 2 green projectiles decisively and suddenly, and even Wei Hong did not expect that he had such a terrifying thing in his hand. He was unable to respond immediately, and could only let the surrounding foundation-building ghosts evacuate first. However, the large piece of green flame spread rapidly under the airwave of the explosion, so that there were still 5 or 6 foundation-building ghosts who could not escape completely and were directly stained with the green flame. In just one breath, the 5 or 6 foundation-building ghosts were instantly burned to ashes by the green flame. As a result, the large area was shrouded in terrifying high temperatures, and the air became distorted. Puff! The green-robed man also spurted out a mouthful of blood at this time, and there were traces of smoke and fire on his body. Obviously, he was still unable to escape completely under the outbreak of the green flame, so that he himself suffered a lot of injuries. After all, he was surrounded by dozens of ghosts just now. It was very risky to use 2 blue flame magic fire thunders. If he was not careful, he would be covered by the blue flames. Even if he escaped from the range of the blue flames by chance, he was still injured by the power of the explosion. But the man in green robe didn't care about his injuries at this time. He got out of the predicament with the help of 2 blue flame magic fire thunders. Naturally, he would not waste them, but quickly fled in the direction away from Wei Hong. Wei Hong retreated a little again with a solemn expression, so that he was not affected by the scorching heat carried by the blue flames. He frowned at this time, stretched out his hand and waved the 10,000 souls banner, and took back all the foundation building ghosts into the banner, and then turned his hand to put away the 10,000 souls banner. At this time, he stretched out his hand slowly and pointed, and the giant sword whizzed towards the man in green robes. At the same time, he also flew up on the sword and followed closely behind. The man in green robe was already seriously injured and was slower than him, so it was not a problem for Wei Hong to catch up with him. Therefore, he did not seem to be in a hurry. Chapter 814, Blue Flame Demonic Fire Thunder. Swish! Before Wei Hong chased the green-robed man, he did not forget to release the other 4 silver corpses from the corpse storage bag. After the 4 silver corpses appeared, they rushed towards the burly man. In this way, Wei Hong was relieved to chase the green-robed man. On the other side, fortunately, the burly man and the 4 silver corpses were not close to the green-robed man, so they were not covered by the blue flames. However, the desperate move of the green-robed man still made the burly man's face change drastically. When he saw that Wei Hong had once again sacrificed 4 silver corpses to rush towards him, the burly man's face turned pale, and his eyes were full of horror. Sunan even used the blue flame demon fire thunder. It seems that this time he has to fight desperately. The burly man Wen Xiao took a deep breath, suppressed a fear and despair in his heart, and did not even look at the 4 newly appeared silver corpses. Instead, he took out a rather dilapidated blood talisman from the storage bag with an expressionless face. Pa! Wen Xiao slapped the old blood talisman directly on himself. Buzz! The next moment, a strong breath suddenly rose from Wen Xiao's body. Wen Xiao's originally sturdy body suddenly rose more than a foot taller, and blood-colored lines appeared on the surface of his body. Those blood-colored lines were like living things, constantly wriggling on the surface of his body. In addition, a layer of thick golden armor appeared on the outside of Wen Xiao's body, which looked very hard, making Wen Xiao look extremely burly and domineering. This change happened in just a breath, and the 4 silver corpses had not yet completely pounced on him. Roar! Wen Xiao suddenly roared to the sky, and his fists collided with each other, making a metallic banging sound. He was like a violent beast at this time, and then he pounced on the 4 silver corpses around him. Bang! Without casting any spells or using any spiritual weapons, Wen Xiao used only a pair of fists to madly bombard the surrounding silver corpses. The silver corpse that was hit by Wen Xiao was instantly knocked out, but it didn't fly far before it stabilized its body without any impact, and then rushed towards Wen Xiao again. However, if you look closely, you will find that the silver corpse that was hit by the front is not really unaffected. A shallow fist mark appeared on its body, but it has been refined into a silver corpse, so it has no pain. At this time, the other 4 silver corpses have also surrounded Wen Xiao, who is like a madman. Faced with such a desperate predicament, Wen Xiao's face was wooden, and a resolute light appeared in his eyes. Then he roared and continued to attack frantically. Only by breaking out of the encirclement of these 8 silver corpses can he survive. But how can 8 silver corpses be so easy to deal with? For a while, there were constant rumbling and explosions. After a cup of tea, a green sword light flew straight from a distance and returned to the battlefield in the blink of an eye. Wei Hong stopped the flying sword in midair, and then slowly scanned the area. At this time, the battlefield had returned to calm. Only the scattered corpses and blood on the ground, as well as the fragments of spiritual weapons and the mess in the mountains and forests, could show how fierce the battle just now was. The 8 silver corpses were quietly suspended in the air, motionless, with wooden expressions. Wei Hong was also holding a headless corpse in his hand at this time. He threw the corpse directly to the ground, and then with a brief glance of his spiritual sense, he guessed what happened after he left just now. It was obvious that when Xiao, a late-stage cultivator of the 8th level of foundation building, did not escape from the siege of the 8 silver corpses. At this time, there was still a tall corpse that looked extremely broken on the ground, which was obviously left by Wen Xiao. He stretched out his hand and the 8 silver corpses immediately surrounded him. Wei Hong observed carefully and found that these silver corpses all had some fist marks of varying depths. It seemed that they did not have much effect on the silver corpses, but if they were not repaired, they would still affect the combat effectiveness of the silver corpses. It seems that I have to repair them properly when I go back. Wei Hong muttered, and with a wave of his hand, he collected the 8 silver corpses. Just now, he chased the green-robed man Sunan, and the result was naturally no surprise. With his own speed and the entanglement of the Jinidan sword, he quickly left Sunan behind, and then easily killed him. This time, in order to deal with Huang Fuming and the other 3 late-stage foundation building cultivators, he had to use many trump cards, even the 10,000 souls banner and the 8 silver corpses, and only then did he successfully kill Huang Fuming and the other 2 without any danger. Now, it was time to search for spoils. Wei Hong temporarily ignored the female cultivator hiding in the forest, but picked up the storage bags of Huang Fuming and the other 2, as well as the remaining white bone 9-section whip, the black shield fragments, the white flying sword and other spiritual tools, and then waved his hand and shot out 3 fireball talismans, completely burning the bodies of Huang Fuming and the other 2 trashes. Only after doing all this did Wei Hong look at the forest below, and then said lightly, "Come out." At this time, a figure flew up from the forest, and then slowly came to Wei Hong, but did not dare to get too close. This person was the female cultivator who was chased by Huang Fuming and the other 2, and when the war broke out, she immediately avoided the war and let Wei Hong fight alone. Wei Hong did not have any good feelings for the behavior of this female cultivator. If it were not for the Fengling flower, he would not have taken action at all. At this moment, he also had questions to ask this female cultivator, so he summoned her out. When the female cultivator came to a place not far in front of Wei Hong, she immediately bowed and said, "I am Yi Ying, thank you for saving my life. What is your name? I will definitely come to thank you again when I go back." This person was a little respectful and humble. She was very cautious in front of Wei Hong, and there was a trace of fear and horror in her eyes when she looked at Wei Hong. After all, she saw with her own eyes how Wei Hong fought against 3 people alone, but used a variety of sharp methods to completely kill Huang Fuming and the other 2. In this way, Yi Ying naturally understood how terrifying Wei Hong's strength was, and knew that she had absolutely no power to resist him, so she behaved very docilely. In addition, the world of immortal cultivation is the strong are respected, so it is natural for her to be more respectful. If she didn't lower her attitude, Yi Ying was also worried that Wei Hong would settle accounts with her later. After all, she didn't use any strength just now. If Wei Hong really wanted to pursue this matter, she really couldn't find a suitable excuse. Fortunately, Wei Hong had no intention of pursuing the matter. He just glanced at Yi Ying coldly, then waved his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist Yi, right? I'm Wang Man. There's no need to thank you. You've already paid me. I only have one question to ask you now. I hope fellow Taoist you can answer truthfully." Chapter 815 Huangfu Family, Golden Elixir Seed. The atmosphere in the air was a little heavy. Wei Hong looked at Yi Ying expressionlessly, and Yi Ying also looked solemn. She did not dare to neglect and hurriedly responded, "Fellow Taoist Wang, please feel free to ask. I will tell you everything I know." Yi Ying could see that the matter that Wei Hong wanted to ask must be not simple, otherwise he would not have such a serious and heavy expression, so Yi Ying's heart was lifted. Wei Hong pondered for a moment, and then slowly said, "Just now, after Huang Fuming was killed by me, a blood-red light emerged from his body and drilled into my body. I believe that fellow Taoist here also saw this scene below. What I am asking about is related to the blood-red light. I wonder if fellow Taoist here knows what the blood-red light is? Why did it drill into my body?" After saying that, Wei Hong's eyes suddenly became sharp. He stared at Yi Ying, not missing any micro-expression on her face. When Yi Ying heard that Wei Hong was asking this, she seemed to be relieved. She immediately understood what Wei Hong meant, so she replied, "So Brother Wang is asking about this. I did see that blood light down there. Come to think of it, I actually know something about this blood light." "Oh? Then please tell me in detail, Brother Yi." Wei Hong's tone was full of unquestionable confidence. Yi Ying naturally would not offend him at this time, and she answered very straightforwardly, "It's like this. The Huangfu family is also one of the stronger Jinan families in Kangshan Fairy City, and Huangfu Ming is the most outstanding genius of the Huangfu family, and the Jinan seed that the Huangfu family focuses on cultivating. Therefore, Huangfu Ming has a blood curse planted in his body by their family. The so-called blood curse is actually a kind of strange and bizarre special restriction. This special restriction can only be planted by those with cultivation above the Jinan stage. Once a person with this blood curse encounters an accident or is killed, this blood curse will automatically attach to the murderer's body, and it is absolutely impossible to expel it without special means or cultivation above the Jinan stage. This kind of blood curse is actually to protect the safety of those outstanding geniuses. At the very least, they must find the murderer who killed their clansmen or disciples, and then find the murderer and make him pay with blood." After speaking, Yi Ying looked at Wei Hong cautiously. Obviously, she knew that Wei Hong had been entangled by Huangfu Ming's blood curse. No one would be comfortable with such a thing, and this matter was caused by Yi Ying asking Wei Hong to take action. Yi Ying was also afraid that Wei Hong would be angry with her. However, after hearing this, Wei Hong's face became more gloomy and solemn. He asked in a deep voice, "In other words, now the blood curse of the Huangfu family has entangled me. In the future, the Huangfu family may find out at any time that I killed Huangfu Ming." "That's right." Yi Ying became more cautious and said softly, "In the future, any member of the Huangfu family, as long as they are within 10 feet of you, can sense the curse power on you." This sentence completely shattered the only trace of luck in Wei Hong's heart. He didn't expect that just killing a member of the Huangfu family could cause more trouble. This really caught him off guard. At the same time, he also had a deeper understanding of the means by which those big forces protect their own geniuses. At this moment, Wei Hong's face was gloomy and cold, but he didn't say a word, which made Yi Ying panic. After a moment, he exhaled lightly, and his face slowly returned to calm. Then he asked Yi Ying, "Do you know how many people from the Huangfu family entered the secret realm this time?" This question made Yi Ying hesitate. She frowned and thought about it, and then answered, "To be honest with you, I don't know how many people from the Huangfu family entered the secret realm this time, but it will definitely not be less than 3. In other words, there are at least 2 more people from the Huangfu family in this secret realm, right?" Wei asked with a cold tone. Yi Ying nodded and said, "Yes, that's right." Hearing this, Wei Hong couldn't help but look up at the sky slightly, and then muttered to himself, "There are 2 more." The atmosphere at the scene gradually became heavy, but Yi Ying didn't dare to say anything more, for fear of attracting Wei Hong's anger, so she could only stay where she was and dare not move. After a moment, Wei Hong suddenly looked at Yi Ying, and then asked in a deep voice, "Fellow Taoist Yi, today's events are only known to you and me. Fellow Taoist Yi, you won't leak this matter out, right?" Yi Ying suddenly felt cold all over, as if she was frightened by Wei Hong's tone. She shuddered suddenly, and then hurriedly waved her hands and replied, "No, no, no, of course not. Fellow Taoist, you can rest assured that I will never leak this matter out. If you don't believe me, I can swear immediately." Yi Ying could clearly sense that a trace of breath was locked on her at this time. If she answered a little slower, or failed to satisfy Wei Hong, she might face Wei Hong's thundering blow. Because she herself knew that only the dead could keep secrets best. After that, Yi Ying looked at Wei Hong tremblingly. Wei Hong nodded calmly and said, "Okay, then please make a vow, fellow Taoist Yi." Yi Ying dared not neglect it after hearing this. She immediately put 3 fingers together with a solemn look, raised the 3 fingers together to the level of her ears, and then swore in a deep voice, "I, Yi Ying, swear here that I will never reveal a single thing that happened today. If I break this oath, I will definitely make my Danshan shattered, my soul scattered, and I will never be reborn." This oath is definitely a poisonous oath. In order to reassure Wei Hong and to save her own life, Yi Ying did not hesitate to make such a poisonous oath in exchange for not being angered by Wei Hong. You must know that this is in the world of immortal cultivation, not in the mortal world. Every cultivator attaches great importance to his oath, because it is absolutely effective, and the oath is directly aimed at the soul. Once the oath is violated, it will be either infatuated or soul scattered. Therefore, every cultivator will not swear easily, but once the oath is made, it will definitely be carefully followed and dare not violated in the slightest. At this moment, As Yu Ying swore the poisonous oath, she suddenly realized that the aura locked on her was slowly dissipating, and the solemn atmosphere gradually recovered. Yu Ying secretly breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that she had made the right move. Sure enough, after Yu Ying swore the poisonous oath, Wei Hong's expression eased slightly, and then he waved his hand at her and said, "Since Dao Yao Yi has already sworn the oath, then Wang naturally trusts Dao Yao. Dao Yao Yi, please do as you please." Yu Ying was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed to Wei Hong and said, "Thank you Dao Yao Wang. I will take my leave first. Dao Yao, take care." After that, she was afraid that Wei Hong would regret it, and hurriedly flew away, not daring to stay for a moment. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 816, Cut into Pieces to Avenge Blood Revenge. The air was calm again. Wei Hong quietly watched Yu Ying's back as she left, without saying a word. Well, forget it. Although I was entangled by the blood curse of the Huangfu family, I also blame myself for not being careful enough. It's useless to think too much. Wei Hong sighed lightly, his face slightly helpless. It's not that he had never thought about leaving Yu Ying behind completely, so as to prevent the news of his killing Huang Fuming from being leaked. But he was not a cruel and bloodthirsty person. In the past, he had killed some robber cultivators and evil cultivators, or people who had ill intentions towards him. He had never taken the initiative to murder others. Therefore, he really couldn't bring himself to do this to Yu Ying. But if Yu Ying was allowed to leave at will, Wei Hong would not be at ease. Since Yu Ying proposed to swear an oath as a guarantee, he agreed to it. In the final analysis, this matter actually had nothing to do with Yu Ying. People gave him Feng Linghe as a reward, and he killed Huang Fuming and others. This was a deal between the two. As for the blood curse on Huang Fuming, it was something unexpected. It was also his own fault for being greedy and coveting that Fengling flower, otherwise such a thing would not have happened. So it was useless to blame Yu Ying. After all, the blood curse could not be dispelled, so he could only accept this fact. It seems that I have to be more careful in the future, especially the people of the Huangfu family. I must not appear around them. Wei Hong secretly warned himself in his heart. Seeing that Yu Ying's back had disappeared into the horizon, he retracted his gaze. Wei Hong touched the several storage bags in his arms at this time, and a smile appeared on his heavy face unconsciously. Although the cost of this move is high, the harvest should be good, and it is worth it for me to make a move. When he thought of his harvest this time, Wei Hong's mood recovered a lot. This time, he not only got a Fengling flower that was helpful for dam formation from Yu Ying, but also killed 3 late-stage foundation building cultivators. Their spiritual tools and storage bags also fell into his hands, especially Huang Fuming, the prodigy of the Jinden family. His storage bag must have rich spoils of war, which also made up for the cost of Wei Hong's move. But now is not the time to check the spoils of war, so Wei Hong suppressed his thoughts, recognized the direction, and flew straight to the south again, ready to continue searching for natural treasures in the depths of the Bihun Mountains. At the same time, in a secret cave in the Xingyin secret realm, a middle-aged man was sitting cross-legged in the cave, posing a 5-heart upward training posture. This middle-aged man had an aquiline nose, narrow eyes, sharp eyebrows, and slightly thin lips. He looked quite regular, but at first glance, he gave people a rather sinister feeling. If Wei Hong were here, he would find that the appearance of this middle-aged man was similar to that of Huang Fuming. Just when Huang Fuming was completely killed by Wei Hong and the blood curse entered Wei Hong's body, the middle-aged man who was meditating in the cave suddenly opened his eyes, and a terrifying light burst out of his eyes, and his face was full of rage and murderous intent. Who killed my Huangfu family's clan? Who dared to be so bold? Huangfu Yun looked horrible, and shouted in anger. He looked ferocious at this time, as if he wanted to eat people. He almost couldn't help but get up in anger, but he was suppressed by him. Huangfu Yun was the leader of the Huangfu family to enter the secret realm this time. He had a perfect foundation and was only 1 step away from entering the ranks of Jinden masters. He was also a high-level person in the Huangfu family. Once he entered the Jinden stage, he would become one of the pillars of the Huangfu family. The reason why he was so furious at this time was because Huangfu Yun sensed the death of Huang Fuming, So he couldn't help but feel a burst of rage and murderous intent in his heart, and he wanted to kill the murderer immediately. There were 3 people from their Huangfu family who entered the secret realm. In addition to him and Huang Fuming, there was another late-stage foundation building cultivator, but that late-stage foundation building cultivator was of the same generation as him and was Huang Fuming's elder. The 3 of them were planted with a blood curse by the Huangfu family's giant ancestor, so after Huang Fuming died, Huang Fuyun sensed this matter at the first time, and the disconnection between the bloodlines also made it difficult for him to calm down. No matter who dares to kill our Huangfu family's killing child, our Huangfu family will never let it go. When I come out of seclusion, I must pay blood debt with blood. Huang Fuming gritted his teeth, and the anger on his face did not decrease at all. Because Huang Fuming is the giant and seed that their family focuses on cultivating, and he is also the most outstanding Xianjiao of this generation of the Huangfu family. Especially before entering the secret realm this time, the Huangfu family's giant ancestor also specifically told Huang Fuyun to take good care of Huang Fuming, but he didn't expect that an accident still happened. At this moment, Huang Fuyun didn't know how to explain to the ancestor after returning. When he thought of the anger of the ancestor, Huang Fuyun couldn't help but shudder. He didn't expect that he had only been in seclusion for a period of time, but Huang Fuming had already been killed. This bloody fact was really hard for Huang Fuyun to accept. Damn it, if I wasn't in seclusion to break through, I would definitely cut the murderer into pieces to avenge my blood. Huang Fuyun cursed with a ferocious face, but he didn't get up after thinking about it. It was just because he was in seclusion to break through, and it was at a very critical moment. The reason why Huang Fuyun led the team into the secret realm this time was not only to find more natural treasures for the family, but also a more important reason, that is, he was going to use the rich spiritual energy of the secret realm to break through. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the secret realm is at least twice as rich as that of the outside world. This is definitely the most ideal place for breakthrough. In order to enable Huang Fuyun to successfully break through, the Huangfu family also spared no effort to find him several natural treasures that would help him break through. So after entering the secret realm, he immediately found this extremely secret cave and prepared to break through in seclusion. If he came out of retreat at this time, it is very likely that his efforts would fail. For this reason, Huang Fuyun still endured it. The most important thing is that becoming a giant and cultivator is much more important than the life and death of a clan member, because giant and cultivators are the foundation of a family, and he must not disappoint the expectations of the ancestors. After all, Huang Fuming's death is an unchangeable fact, but he cannot let any accidents happen to his breakthrough, and the Huangfu family cannot afford such a big loss, so no matter how furious Huang Fuyun is in his heart, he still can't come out of retreat immediately. Moreover, as long as he successfully breaks through to the giant stage, he can sweep across the secret realm and take all the treasures in the secret realm into his pocket. At that time, their Huangfu family will also become the biggest winner of this trip to the secret realm. No matter who you are, you wait for me. I, Huang Fuyun, swear not to be a human being until you die. After making a vicious oath in his heart, Huang Fuyun closed his eyes again. Chapter 817 Xianluo Huangxin Grass. Half a month later. Wei Hong searched for half a month in the depths of the Bihun Mountains. During this period of time, the area he searched was very wide, and he searched almost all the areas in the depths of the Bihun Mountains. Therefore, while searching a large area, he began to meet many monks one after another, but these monks were in groups of 3 or 2, and after seeing Wei Hong, they did not have any conflicts with him, but were wary of each other and avoided each other. Wei Hong was naturally happy with this, so he put most of his energy into searching for natural treasures. In this half-month, his harvest was very good. He found a lot of natural treasures, most of which were second-level high-quality spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. He also found another natural treasure that was helpful for Dan formation, which was a spiritual herb called Xianluo Huangxin Grass. Such a harvest naturally made Wei Hong very satisfied. This secret realm is really a good place. There are so many natural treasures. If it were in the outside world, they would have been picked countless times by others. How could it be my turn? Wei Hong chuckled and shook his head, looking towards the inner domain. During this period of time, he has explored most of the areas deep in the Bihun Mountains. It is meaningless to stay here any longer. Therefore, he is now considering whether to set off for the inner domain immediately. Now more than half a month has passed, But he still hasn't met Lingzhu and others, and he doesn't know where they are. However, if he goes to the inner domain, he and Lingzhu should have a great chance of meeting. This secret realm is indeed very vast. Now I haven't met fellow Taoisting yet. It seems that I can only meet her by going to the inner domain. Wei Hong was suddenly shocked, but he had already made up his mind. He immediately flew up on his sword and continued to fly towards the south. But before Wei Hong completely left the Bihan Mountains, just when he came to the sky above a large dense forest, he suddenly found that there were strong and turbulent spiritual power fluctuations in the distance, accompanied by loud noises. What's going on? Wei Hong subconsciously became alert and immediately scanned the surroundings. However, there was no abnormal situation around him. Instead, it seemed that an extremely fierce battle was taking place more than 10 miles in front of him. Wei Hong immediately looked at it, but it was too far away to see the specific situation over there. What's going on? Why is the spiritual power fluctuation over there so intense? Could it be that a war broke out there? Wei Hong secretly guessed. His eyes flickered, and after a moment of silence, he continued to fly forward without any intention of taking a detour. Obviously, he was going to see what was going on there. Since there was a war there must be some rare treasures. I can't miss this excitement. Maybe I can get something. Wei Hong smiled lightly, and he also had the idea of waiting for the opportunity. But before he really approached, he restrained all his aura and put on a second-level middle-grade flying sword, which looked inconspicuous at all. Then he slowed down and approached slowly. After flying forward for about 10 miles, Wei Hong finally saw the situation not far ahead. Huh? So many people. After seeing the situation in front of him, Wei Hong was immediately confused. It was because the situation in front was too chaotic that he couldn't understand what was going on. In the sky above the mountain forest not far ahead, there were as many as 20 to 30 people fighting wildly. Various spiritual weapons were flying in the air. Figures kept flying up and down, dodging back and forth, or throwing out various talismans, making the battle situation in the area ahead even more chaotic. That's not all. In addition to the monks fighting in the air, there were more than a dozen people fighting each other in the forest on the ground. The lights and flames of various spiritual weapons flashed from time to time, and there were all kinds of explosions, roars, collisions and screams, which were quite noisy. In short, there was only one word to describe the situation, that is chaos. Wei Hong was dazzled. For a moment, he couldn't tell who was who, and he couldn't figure out what happened. He couldn't help but fight with dozens of monks. But in the face of such a chaotic scene, he was very sober. While no one had discovered him, he immediately pressed the flying sword and landed in the forest on the ground, using the forest to hide his body. At the same time, he slapped a spiritual hidden talisman on himself, and after hiding his body, he slowly moved towards the battlefield in front. When he came to a place 1 mile away from the battlefield, Wei Hong stopped quietly. At this time, an angry and arrogant voice suddenly resounded through the air. "Han Shan, get out of my way, or don't blame me for getting serious." The next moment, another voice responded, "Okay, I want to try your real tricks, otherwise you get out of my way." The cultivator named Bailey Zhang immediately sneered in anger upon hearing this. Okay, you forced me to do this." Swish. A black flying knife emitting a terrifying murderous aura instantly rose in the wind, and then chopped wildly at a man in a blue robe in front. The one who offered the flying knife was a young man in a black robe. Wei Hong heard the voice and went forward, and saw the two people fighting. The cultivation realm of these two cultivators has also reached the 9th level of foundation building. The Bailey Zhang in black robe has even reached the peak of the 9th level of foundation building, and is only one step away from trying to form a pill. Wei Hong scanned the area and found that the cultivation of these two people could be ranked in the top 3 among the dozens of cultivators. Except for another cultivator at the 9th level of foundation building, most of the other cultivators who were fighting were only at the 7th and 8th levels of foundation building. The blue-robed man named Han Shan saw that Bailey Zhang really used his real means. Although he acted very calmly, when he saw the black flying knife slashing down, a trace of solemnity appeared in Han Shan's eyes. He also sacrificed a spiritual weapon, which was a white fan. The two sides of the fan were engraved with patterns of the sun, moon, mountains and waters. After the fan was taken out, it seemed that the temperature around him dropped a lot. Han Shan injected spiritual power into the fan in his hand, making the fan immediately become 3 feet in size. Then he held the fan with both hands and slammed it towards the black flying knife that was slashing down. Huh? After waving the fan, a white mist immediately emerged from the surface of the fan. The white mist exuded an extremely cold, freezing the air into ice. Bang! The solid ice condensed from the mist collided fiercely with a black flying knife. Chapter 818 Kindling Bodhi Fruit. The chaotic battle situation at the scene made Wei Hong feel that he had no idea where to start. Bailey Zhang and Han Shan, two late-stage foundation-building cultivators, were fighting fiercely and had no time to care about other people. Apart from the two of them, the other cultivators were also fighting each other. But Wei Hong observed carefully for a while and found that the situation did not seem to be the case. Whether it was the cultivators in the mountains and forests on the ground or the cultivators in the air, although they seemed to be fighting each other, they all stayed within a range that was neither too large nor too small, neither too far away, but rather wanted to enter the center of that area. However, if anyone wanted to get close to the center of that area, they would be driven away by the concentrated fire of others. Therefore, in this case, no one could get close to the center of that area. In this way, the entire battlefield seemed to be extremely chaotic, but there was one thing in common, that is, everyone wanted to get close to the center of the encirclement, but no one could get it. Wei Hong found that each cultivator who was fighting did not actually kill, but looked at the middle area from time to time, where they obviously had something they all wanted very much. After discovering this, he had an idea, and then quietly climbed up a big tree and looked down from a high place. Huh? After seeing the scene in the central area clearly, Wei Hong was surprised and secretly wondered. Because in that central area, more than 10 big trees had been cut in half, leaving an open area in the forest, and he could look down from mid-air and clearly see the situation on the ground. Next to the stump of a big tree, there grew a small tree more than 3 feet tall. This small tree was green all over, with a trunk only the size of a fist, and the surface was extremely smooth. It also had extremely lush branches and leaves, which were also green, and there were some mysterious patterns on the surface of the leaves. Although Wei Hong was 2 or 3 miles away from the small tree at this time, he could sense a trace of extremely abundant vitality emanating from the small tree. The most important thing was that at the top of the small tree, there was a fruit that was also green all over, but only the size of an egg, and seemed to be full of vitality. There are 3 green leaves under the fruit, and several mysterious runes are condensed on the surface of the fruit. Those mysterious runes light up from time to time, making the fruit look extraordinary. Kindling Bodhi Fruit. After seeing the appearance of the fruit, Wei Hong couldn't help but exclaim secretly. Then, a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. Absolutely right, this is definitely Kindling Bodhi Fruit. Haha, I didn't expect to encounter this fruit here. It seems that this trip is really right. Wei Hong laughed ecstatically in his heart, staring at the green fruit. At this moment, he finally understood why there was a large-scale melee among dozens of monks. He also finally understood why everyone was blocking other monks from approaching the center of this area, just because if they approached the fruit tree, they might pick the Kindling Bodhi fruit. This was naturally something that no one could accept, so they also blocked other monks from approaching the fruit tree during the melee. The so-called Kindling Bodhi fruit is an extremely rare natural treasure, and it has a very good effect on forming a pill. This Kindling Bodhi fruit can provide a lot of vitality, which can not only help the cultivators repair various hidden injuries in the body, but also allow the cultivators to more effectively condense spiritual power in the process of forming a pill, so that the spiritual power can evolve towards the golden pill. In this way, the value of this Kindling Bodhi fruit is self-evident. It is precisely because of this that all the cultivators here want to get this spiritual fruit. Wei Hong came too late and didn't know who wanted to discover this fruit tree, but now it seems that many people discovered this natural treasure at the same time, and before they had time to pick it, more cultivators appeared. Under such circumstances, they were naturally wary of each other and confronted each other, resulting in no one being able to successfully pick the spiritual fruit, and the melee should have suddenly broken out under such circumstances. After learning the real reason for the outbreak of the melee, Wei Hong's mind became completely active. Fight, take your time, I won't join in the fun. After you decide the winner, I will find a way to snatch the Kindling Bodhi fruit. Wei Hong smiled secretly in his heart and made a decision immediately. The situation is too chaotic now, everyone is in the melee, everyone is staring at the spiritual fruit. Once someone takes the spiritual fruit, they will definitely become the target of public criticism, which is not something Wei Hong can bear. In this case, it is better to change to a simpler method. As long as he keeps watching here, no matter who finally takes the spiritual fruit, it is impossible to escape unscathed, and it is even likely to be seriously injured. In this way, his chance will really come. As long as he can track the monk who took the spiritual fruit, he can snatch the spiritual fruit with his own strength. In this way, he does not have to face dozens of monks who are eyeing him, and he can act in secret, reduce the risk to the minimum, and maximize the harvest. It is simply a matter of killing two birds with one stone. Thinking of this, Wei Hong slowly retreated without any reluctance. He didn't dare to stay in this chaotic area. It was too dangerous. If he was not careful, he would expose his whereabouts. This would definitely be harmful to his future actions. So he immediately left the chaotic area and watched silently from a distance. At this time, the fight between Bailey Xiang and Han Shan had become more and more intense. Both sides gradually became angry and no longer held back. They began to use their real means. Swish! Bailey Xiang controlled the black flying knife and chopped it continuously. At the same time, he continued to cast various spells and bombarded Han Shan. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Han Shan controlled the white fan and sprayed out pieces of cold air, barely blocking Bailey Xiang's flying knife. At the same time, he continued to throw out various talismans to offset the attacking spells. Seeing that both of them were really angry, the monks next to them subconsciously moved away a little, fearing that they would be affected by the offensive of the two. After all, Bailey Xiang and Han Shan had the highest cultivation in the field. However, Wei Hong in the distance quietly noticed that although Bailey Xiang and Han Shan were no longer merciful, they were also planning to repel or kill each other. Their various attacks were extremely sharp, but they consciously approached the fruit tree slowly. Not many monks at the scene noticed this situation, and they moved away. Tisk, good tricks. If there is no accident, this kingling Bodhi fruit should fall into the hands of Bailey Xiang. Looking at the battle in the distance, Wei Hong made his own judgment in his heart. Chapter 819, 8-Gate Golden Light Array. The situation is quietly changing in ways that are difficult to detect. Wei Hong stared at Bailey Xiang's figure, and had already determined in his mind who would win the spiritual fruit. He had seen this Bailey Xiang once before in the hall where thousands of foundation-building monks gathered. According to Ling Zhu, Bailey Xiang was the purest prodigy of the Immortal City. His master was one of the disciples of Kangshan's Henren, and seemed to be a deputy city lord with a very high status, and his cultivation had reached the late stage of the golden color. In other words, this Bailey Xiang was also the disciple of Kangshan's Henren. Therefore, Bailey Xiang was a genuine inner disciple of the Immortal City, and one of the most outstanding young people in the Immortal City, and was even placed high hopes by his master. In terms of status and position, it can be said that he was not inferior to the prodigies of those big forces and big sects. Wei Hong absolutely did not believe that such a prodigy cultivated by a big force had no trump cards in his hand. So he judged that no one here would be Bailey Xiang's opponent. As the saying goes, those who are involved are confused, but those who are watching can see clearly. Wei Hong was observing the entire battlefield from the side, so he naturally understood the true changes in the situation better than the cultivators who were fighting in the battlefield. As expected, the situation was as he expected. Bailey Xiang took advantage of the momentum of the fight with Han Shan and slowly approached the 50-foot range of the kindling Bodhi fruit. Bailey Xiang's position at this time was already very close to the spiritual fruit. If no one stopped him, he might even pick the spiritual fruit completely within 3 breaths. At this time, someone finally reacted. A bearded man suddenly roared, "Bailey Xiang, Han Shan, what do you want to do?" As soon as these words came out, they immediately attracted the attention of dozens of cultivators. It was not until this time that everyone realized that Bailey Xiang and Han Shan had gradually approached the kindling Bodhi fruit during the fight, and the current position of the two was also unusually prominent and eye-catching. If these cultivators still couldn't understand Bailey Xiang's thoughts at this time, then they didn't have to survive in this world of immortal cultivation. Bailey Xiang, retreat quickly. Han Shan, stop him quickly, don't let him get close to the fruit tree. Stop, Bailey Xiang, how dare you? Hurry up, stop him. After reacting, dozens of monks who were a little further away suddenly roared and scolded. At the same time, they also stopped the melee very tacitly, and turned to attack Bailey Xiang and Han Shan, trying to stop them from getting close to the fruit tree. At this moment, Bailey Xiang finally showed his fangs. Haha, you just reacted now? It's too late, everyone. I will accept this spiritual fruit without hesitation. Bailey Zhang suddenly laughed up to the sky, and after repelling Han Shan with one blow, he immediately turned around and flew towards the spiritual fruit at a high speed. In the process of approaching the spiritual fruit, Bailey Zhang not only laid several layers of shields on the outside of his body, but also took out an exquisite jade talisman. After activating the jade talisman, it immediately formed a layer of golden shield that looked extremely hard, covering it tightly. With the help of such a solid shield, Bailey Zhang quickly approached the spiritual fruit. However, Han Shan, who was only one step behind at this time, smiled coldly and said, "Want to borrow my hand to pick the spiritual fruit? There is no such cheap thing in the world." He stretched out his hand and pointed, and a long black rope flew out from his sleeve. This long black rope looked neither gold nor wood, and no one knew what material it was made of, but the surface was not smooth, but slightly rough, and there was a snake head at the end of the long rope, which looked very strange. When Bailey Zhang saw the long black rope, he couldn't help but exclaim with a slightly changed face, "Black nether-locking rope. This thing is in your hand. Humph, how else can I play this scene with you? Do you think I can't guess your thoughts?" Han Shan responded with a cold sneer. This black nether-locking rope is one of Han Shan's reliance and trump cards. He naturally saw Bailey Zhang's thoughts, but Han Shan himself had his own plans, so he accompanied Bailey Zhang and took advantage of the momentum and movement of the fight to get closer to the kindling Bodhi fruit. Han Shan had long anticipated Bailey Zhang's actions, but he was also very confident in the long rope in his hand. It was because this black nether-locking element rope was a second-grade spiritual weapon, and it was a special kind of spiritual weapon. The snake head at the end of this rope had the triple effects of breaking spells, breaking shields, and breaking prohibitions. The long rope itself had the effect of blocking spiritual power and restraining the enemy. At the same time, it was extremely tough, and even spiritual weapons of the same grade could hardly cut it off. It was an excellent weapon for sneak attacks and interceptions. As long as Bailey Zhang was stopped and restrained for a period of time, no one would be able to compete with him for the kindling Bodhi fruit. Han Shan's plan was indeed very good. After offering the black nether-locking element rope, he quickly approached the kindling Bodhi fruit. It must be said that these so-called Xianjiao were indeed not simple people. After Bailey Zhang recognized the long rope, he was ridiculed by Han Shan again, and a furious look instantly appeared on his face. Okay, it's really a good trick, but you want to trap me with a black nether-locking element rope. Isn't it too much to underestimate me, Bailey Zhang?" Puff. While he was speaking, the snake head at the end of the longer rope had already spit out more a black and sharp tongue, which instantly broke the shield that Bailey Zhang had laid with a jade talisman. Then the black and dark lock rope ignored the layers of shields laid by Bailey Zhang and came directly behind him. As for the attacks of other monks, they were all blocked by Bailey Zhang's shield. Bailey Zhang took out a palm-sized golden bagua mirror from his arms with a solemn face and threw it out directly. At the same time, the spiritual power in his body also rushed into the golden bagua mirror frantically, causing the bagua mirror to immediately swell in the wind and become the size of a gong. At the same time, a faint golden light was flowing on the mirror surface of the bagua mirror. The layer of golden light condensed slightly and gathered into a palm-sized golden light column, which then sprayed out directly. Buzz! The golden light column directly shone on the black and dark lock rope that was about to approach Bailey Zhang's back. Under the illumination of the golden light column, the Dark Soul's locking element rope was immediately fixed in midair. The snake head at the end of the long rope could not move forward at all. The Dark Soul's locking element rope was like a long snake that was pinched by 7 inches. The snake head could not move at all. Instead, the snake tail kept twisting and swinging, but it could not get rid of the restriction of the golden light column. 8-gate golden light mirror. Behind Bailey Zhang, Han Shan could not help but exclaimed immediately after seeing the mirror. It was not until this moment that Han Shan seemed to realize that his plan seemed to have gone a little wrong. Chapter 820 Taking Advantage of Someone's Misfortune. HMPH, you are allowed to have the black nether-locking yuan rope, but I am not allowed to have the 8-gate golden light mirror. Bailey Zhang smiled coldly without turning his head, and quickly approached the kindling Bodhi fruit while the black nether-locking yuan rope was fixed. This is actually not the real 8-gate golden light mirror, but a replica of the 8-gate golden light mirror. The real 8-gate golden light mirror is composed of 8 mirrors, which is a very powerful magic weapon. The mirror in Bailey Zhang's hand is just a replica of the 8-gate golden light mirror, and he only has one. However, even if it is just a replica of the magic weapon, this mirror has reached the grade of the second-level top-grade spiritual weapon, and it also has a trace of the power of the 8-gate golden light mirror, so it can easily fix the black nether-locking yuan rope. Han Shan's face changed, and he didn't care to say anything more. He stretched out his hand and waved a blue flying sword to pierce Bailey Zhang's back. At this time, he was also approaching at a rapid speed. As for the monks farther away, it was even more difficult to stop the two of them at this time. Bailey Zhang did not even turn his head, but waved his hand to offer the black flying knife, blocking Han Shan's blue flying sword, without even looking at Han Shan. At this moment, he was only 10 feet away from the spiritual fruit. Han Shan's face was gloomy, and he gritted his teeth. He could no longer care about so many things. He first threw a stack of talismans at Bailey Zhang, and then offered the white fan, trying to use cold air to stagnate Bailey Zhang's speed. He was only less than 10 feet behind Bailey Zhang at this time. As long as he could slightly affect Bailey Zhang in front, he could pick the spiritual fruit faster and escape far away. At this time, the monks in the distance were also unwilling to fall behind. Even though they could not catch up, they still launched an extremely fierce attack, covering Bailey Zhang and Han Shan. Damn it! Han Shan's face changed drastically, but he did not dare to take these attacks head-on. He could only grit his teeth and move his body away, temporarily avoiding those attacks. On the contrary, Bailey Zhang rushed forward regardless, as if he wanted to pick the kindling Bodhi fruit under the fierce attack. Buzz! The several layers of shields that were ignored by the black nether-locking rope but still existed firmly protected Bailey Zhang, and the next moment the offensive formed by various spiritual tools and talismans suddenly bombarded him. Bang bang bang. Rumble. A series of strong explosions completely enveloped Bailey Zhang, but Bailey Zhang gritted his teeth and still came to the side of the fruit tree regardless, and quickly picked the kindling Bodhi fruit, put it in a jade box, and then put the jade box into the storage bag. This process seemed very long, but it actually happened in the blink of an eye. However, facing the fierce attack of dozens of monks, the several layers of shields outside Bailey Zhang only lasted for less than a breath before they suddenly shattered. Puff! The moment the shield was completely broken, Bailey Zhang also endured a lot of attacks. Even though he was well prepared and had a shield, he was still shocked and vomited blood, and his breath immediately weakened. Even the inner armor he was wearing was exposed. Fortunately, the inner armor blocked a lot of attacks for him, otherwise he would not only be seriously injured, but would probably be completely blown to pieces. However, Bailey Zhang did not dodge at this time. Taking advantage of the gap before the second wave of attacks from other monks arrived, he gritted his teeth and spit out blood again. At the same time, he immediately pinched his hands and muttered something in his mouth very quickly, and soon finished a spell. The next moment, the blood he spit out turned into a layer of blood mist that tightly wrapped it. I will remember this great favor, especially Han Shan. When I return to the Immortal City, I will definitely repay you well. Don't fall into my hands in the future. Haha, goodbye everyone. The moment he was wrapped in the blood mist, Bailey Zhang first waved his hand to take back the flying sword, mirror and other spiritual tools, and then looked at Han Shan and other cultivators with a cold gaze. Although he was smiling, his words were not full of smiles, but were filled with strong hatred. After these words came out, seeing Bailey Zhang's figure slowly fading, both Han Shan and other cultivators in the distance changed their faces. These were not words of gratitude, but clearly threats with hatred. Whoosh! After he finished speaking, before Han Shan and others could react, Bailey Zhang in the blood mist immediately disappeared, and he had obviously fled far away. Blood shadow escape. Han Shan muttered with an ugly face. He didn't expect that Bailey Zhang not only had the 8-gate golden light mirror, but also that he could use the blood shadow escape that only a giant stage cultivator could use skillfully, and escaped in an instant, completely disappearing. To be honest, Han Shan didn't expect this result. When he thought of the threats Bailey Zhang made before he left, his face became even uglier. Not only did he not gain anything this time, but he also offended Bailey Zhang. It was really not worth the loss. For a moment, Han Shan's face became uncertain. The dozens of cultivators further away looked at each other, and no longer had the idea of taking action. They all looked ugly at this time, and there was a hint of fear in their eyes. This is what to do. It has nothing to do with me. I didn't do it. What are you afraid of? I don't believe that Bailey Zion can remember so many of us. Besides, we won't meet him after we return to the Immortal City. Yes, 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 let's go, let's go. Some of the dozens of cultivators were afraid that Bailey Zion would settle accounts with them later, while others showed that they didn't care. However, after seeing Bailey Zion fleeing away, although they were disappointed and had not gained anything, and were also worried about Bailey Zion's threats, they did not dare to mention any pursuit. Instead, they dispersed tacitly and left the place immediately. Only Han Shan stayed there with a gloomy face, and left after a long time. After all, Bailey Zion had already taken a Kingling Bodhi fruit, and he had no way to pursue him now. No matter how unwilling he was, he could only accept this result. Only Wei Hong in the distance was still waiting motionlessly at this time. Tisk tisk tisk, he is indeed the disciple of Kangshan's Henrun. He not only has many trump cards in his hands, but also has extremely terrifying strength. However, it is indeed as I expected. It is really Bailey Zion who took the Kingling Bodhi fruit. Looking at the deserted battlefield in the distance, Wei Hong's eyes began to flicker. And not only was he not disappointed at all, but he felt a little excited. In this case, don't blame me for taking advantage of someone's misfortune. Han Shan and others did not want to chase Bailey Zion anymore. First, it was not worth it. Bailey Zion's identity made them dare not act rashly. Second, they could not chase him. They had no means to find Bailey Zion, so they could only leave helplessly. However, Wei Hong was different. It was not difficult for him to find Bailey Zion. Chapter 821 Invincible. The sky above the forest was calm again. The dozens of monks had already dispersed, leaving only the mess on the battlefield. Wei Hong waited quietly for a while, and then quietly approached the fruit tree that had been picked with a Kingling Bodhi fruit. Soon he came to the fruit tree, but did not act immediately. Instead, he first sent 2 papermen out to guard the surroundings, and then searched carefully around the fruit tree. Found it. Wei Hong's face was brightened, and he immediately collected the few drops of blood dripping on the ground with the jade bottle. The real reason why he came near this fruit tree was to collect the few drops of blood he had just saved. For him, this fruit tree that had lost its fruit had no value in itself. What he really cared about was the few drops of blood left by Bailey Zion. Because only Bailey Zion was near this location, and he had just vomited 2 mouthfuls of blood after picking the Kingling Bodhi fruit, Wei Hong was sure that the blood left next to the fruit tree must be Bailey Zion's blood. After getting Bailey Zion's blood, Wei Hong could use these drops of blood as a medium to deduce divination to find Bailey Zion's true location. After getting the things, he left this place immediately. Wei Hong quickly found a safe and secret cave again, and after covering the entrance with a formation, he immediately entered the cave. He flicked his sleeves and swept away the dust and gravel on the ground, then took out a jade bottle containing Bailey Zion's blood from the storage bag, and took out 6 copper coins. Wei Hong tilted the jade bottle slightly, and a drop of blood dripped out of it. He stretched out his right index finger to catch the blood and then gently wiped it on the 6 copper coins, and then threw the 6 copper coins out casually. Before the coins fell to the ground, Wei Hong began to chant something, and the spiritual power in his body surged slightly, instantly transferring to the 6 coins. Snap! The 6 coins fell gently to the ground, presenting a hexagram that only he could understand. Huh? After Wei Hong saw the hexagram clearly, he was immediately surprised and suspicious. He actually turned back to the west? And the distance is not far? Haha, this Bailey Zion is really cunning. He did not expect that after Bailey Zion used the blood shadow escape to escape, he did not leave directly forward, but turned back to the west, and according to the hexagram, his location should be only 100 or 200 miles away from here. Maybe I'm wrong. Wei Hong suddenly realized, and then thought to himself, this person was already seriously injured when he escaped. Even if he used the blood shadow escape, it was already good to be able to escape so far. In addition, the first thing this person must do after escaping is to heal his injuries, so this distance is reasonable. After all, his injuries cannot be dragged on forever. Thinking of this, he immediately felt enlightened. In a good mood, Wei Hong immediately left the cave. After carefully identifying it, he immediately flew quickly in the direction indicated by the divination. During the flight, Wei Hong couldn't help but be cautious and alert to the surroundings. At the same time, Every time he flew a certain distance, he would stop to deduce divination once to accurately determine Bailey Zhang's position. After more than an hour, he stopped above a vast dense forest. This dense forest looked very similar to the dense forest where Bailey Zhang and others had a melee before, but the trees in this dense forest were taller and more lush. If you look down from mid-air, you can't see the situation in the dense forest at all. The reason why Wei Hong stopped here was because the result of his divination just now showed that Bailey Zhang was hiding in this dense forest, which also meant that his opportunity was here. Wonderful, he is worthy of being the disciple of Kangshan's Henren, the top genius of the inner gate of the immortal city, hiding in such a place. If it were someone else, he would really not be able to find him. Looking at the large dense forest below, Wei Hong couldn't help but secretly praise it. The area of this dense forest is extremely wide. If it weren't for the discovery of natural treasures, or if every inch of land was searched, no one would have thought that Bailey Zhang would hide here. So he immediately landed on the ground and quietly approached Bailey Zhang's hiding place. Soon, Wei Hong stopped again. At this time, dozens of feet in front of him, there was a blank area with slightly lower terrain, which happened to be between 4 giant trees. There was also a huge rock in front and behind. If you don't observe carefully, it is really difficult to find the location similar to the basin in the forest. Wei Hong no longer needed to divine again. He opened the spiritual light treasure mirror and looked forward. He could clearly see the spiritual light of the formation there. Obviously, Bailey Zhang was hiding in the formation. Looking at the hiding place in front of him, Wei Hong couldn't help but whispered softly, "You really know how to choose a place. I'm afraid no one can find this place except me." He murmured, but his movements were not slow at all. Since he had already determined that Bailey Zhang was hiding here, he naturally would not hesitate. He waved his hand, and the 6 paper figures scattered in a fan shape. After landing, the paper figures returned to adult size, and then quickly and quietly went to the designated location. Soon, they formed an encirclement and surrounded the formation set up by Bailey Zhang. The positions of the 6 paper figures were exactly the 6 directions of the 6 absolute blue thunder formation. Obviously, Wei Hong was preparing to completely cut off Bailey Zhang's retreat. At this time, Bailey Zhang stayed in the formation. With the cover and shield of the formation, he had no idea what was happening outside, so Wei Hong was not worried about anything. As his mind moved, the 6 paper figures quickly arranged the 6 absolute blue thunder formation. After the formation was arranged, Wei Hong secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although he did not have much pressure facing Bailey Zhang, a genius from the inner sect of the immortal city, Bailey Zhang was the disciple of Kangshan's Henren after all, and his means and strength should not be underestimated, so he did not dare to be careless in the slightest. As long as Bailey Zhang was trapped in the 6 absolute blue thunder formation, Wei Hong would be invincible. Moreover, he knew that the other party had been seriously injured. Even if there was any means to temporarily suppress the injury, it would not be a problem for him to defeat Bailey Zhang with his means. Thinking of this, Wei Hong no longer hesitated, and strode directly to the front of the formation set up by Bailey Zhang, with a solemn expression. If it weren't for the spiritual light treasure mirror, he wouldn't have noticed that someone had set up a formation in front of him. Looks like we can only force our way in. Wei Hong smiled lightly, without any psychological burden. He slowly raised his right hand, and a hazy sword light emerged from his palm. Wei Hong didn't hesitate at all, and slashed forward with his right palm. Chapter 822 Wishful Thinking. Puff. The green sword light in Wei Hong's hand suddenly encountered some obstacles, but under the sharp and terrifying power of the green sword light, the white light shield that suddenly appeared due to the attack did not play any blocking role, and was directly cut by the green sword light. Wei Hong moved his body and directly passed through the passage and broke into the formation. The next moment, a flying sword fell on his head. Fortunately, Wei Hong was well prepared, and the giant sword was the first to meet it. Bang! The 2 flying swords collided fiercely, and then bounced out. Wei Hong also sacrificed the black iron flying shield, and after protecting himself firmly, he calmly moved forward. Not far in front of him, Bailey Zhang was slowly getting up with an extremely ugly face. His eyes were full of shock, confusion, murderous intent and other emotions, and his breath and anger rose instantly. Obviously, Bailey Zhang, who was hiding here to heal his wounds, noticed the enemy's invasion at the first time, so he was attacked by Wei Hong the moment he broke into the formation. He wanted to take the initiative. However, Bailey Zhang did not expect Wei Hong to react so quickly, or to say that he was fully prepared, so that his sneak attack did not have any effect at all. Therefore, Bailey Zhang did not dare to act rashly at this time. Good, very good. Bailey Zhang's face was as gloomy as ink, his eyes were filled with unspeakable horror and murderous intent, staring at Wei Hong and said, "It seems that I was still careless. Who are you? How dare you chase me here?" His hiding place was suddenly broken into by someone. Faced with such a thing, even Bailey Zhang could not remain calm. It was just out of fear and uncertainty about Wei Hong that he could only suppress it. Facing Bailey Zhang's questioning and seeing him in a state of readiness, Wei Hong smiled calmly and said, "Haha, Dao Bailey, don't be nervous. I am Wang Meng, just a casual cultivator. It's normal that Dao haven't heard of me. I just happened to see Dao showing off your power and suppressing dozens of cultivators. It's just that Dao left in a hurry, and I didn't have time to get to know you. It's a pity. Fortunately, Wang happens to know some tracking methods, so I came uninvited. I hope Dao won't blame me." As he said that, Wei Hong took a step forward lightly, and the aura of the 9th level of foundation building immediately burst out, instantly suppressing Bailey Zhang's momentum. Hearing Wei Hong's shameless words, and finding that Wei Hong's cultivation level was not inferior to his, Bailey Zhang's face suddenly became uglier, and his eyes almost spit fire. He gritted his teeth and said, "Since you know my identity, you still dare to come alone. It seems that you are very confident in your own strength. I don't deserve it." Wei Hong smiled and shook his head, then said lightly, "But with your seriously injured body, it is not easy to keep Wang. Wang thinks it is not difficult to leave." This sentence is actually telling Bailey Zhang that Wei Hong already knows that he is seriously injured, and at the same time he is very confident in his own strength, which is definitely not something that the seriously injured Bailey Zhang can contend with. Sure enough, Bailey Zhang was so angry when he heard this that his teeth were about to break. He stared at Wei Hong fiercely for a long time, and suddenly sneered, Okay, since you are tracking me, I guess you are here for the Kingling Bodhi fruit, right?" Bailey Zhang is naturally not a simple person, and he immediately guessed Wei Hong's intention. Wei Hong did not try to hide it at all, and nodded directly, saying, "Yes, that Kingling Bodhi fruit is very useful to me. With your status, it should not be difficult to find another such treasure, so please give me that Kingling Bodhi fruit. As long as you hand over the fruit, I will leave immediately and will not disturb you from recovering from your injuries. What do you think?" Wei Hong said the threatening words that made Bailey Zhang furious in a very friendly and calm tone. He wanted to force the other party to hand over the fruit to avoid a big battle. To be honest, whether before or now, Wei Hong had no intention of killing Bailey Zhang here. His real purpose has always been to get the Kingling Bodhi fruit. Because he had suffered a loss from Huang Fuming once, and Bailey Zhang's status and position were much higher than Huang Fuming, so he must have extremely terrifying means of saving his life, or a special restriction similar to the blood curse set by his senior master. In this case, how could Wei Hong dare to kill? After all, he had to make a living in Xiancheng. Once he killed Bailey Zhang, he would definitely not be able to escape after returning to Xiancheng. He might even be discovered by Bailey Zhang's master as soon as he returned to Xiancheng, and thus face a dilemma between life and death. Wei Hong must absolutely avoid such a thing. Therefore, it would be the best thing for Bailey Zhang to hand over the spiritual fruit. However, Bailey Zhang was filled with murderous intent when he heard this, and immediately laughed in anger. "Very good, Dao is the first person who dares to talk to me like this, but if you want me to hand over the spiritual fruit directly, Dao is probably wishful thinking. If you really want it, then come and get it yourself." After that, Bailey Zhang roared furiously, and the flying sword hovering above his head stabbed towards Wei Hong again. At the same time, he threw out more than 10 talismans, and took the initiative to attack without saying a word. After all, he is the most outstanding Xianjiao in the inner gate of Xiancheng. How can he bear the threat of others? Even though he was seriously injured, Bailey Zhang would never allow anyone to underestimate him. At the same time, after offering the flying sword and the talisman, Bailey Zhang immediately made a gesture with his hands and began to chant something. When Wei Hong saw Bailey Zhang take the initiative, he stopped talking and offered the Jinian sword with a wave of his hand to block the stabbing flying sword. Then he offered the Huangluo umbrella and successfully blocked all the more than 10 attacking talismans with the help of the defense of the Zuanti flying shield and the Huangluo umbrella. The next moment, a black arrow without any fluctuations had already arrived in front of Wei Hong. Although Wei Hong was shocked, he did not panic and threw out a self-destructing talisman. He quickly retreated a distance to avoid the area where the self-destructing talisman exploded. Boom! With a loud noise, the terrifying firelight accompanied by a strong shock completely shattered the black arrow, which did not pose any threat to Wei Hong at all. This time, before Bailey Xiang could make another move, Wei Hong pointed his finger, and 2 silver corpses rushed out and quickly killed Bailey Xiang. Bailey Xiang, who was about to continue casting a spell, saw the appearance of the 2 silver corpses, and his face changed slightly. He had no time to continue casting a spell, but first sacrificed a jade talisman, forming a thick and solid golden light shield around his body. This jade talisman was exactly the same as the one Bailey Xiang had used when he seized the Kingling Bow de Fruit before. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 823 Invincible. Bang! Before the 2 silver corpses could really get close, they were hammered backwards by the white jade hammer that Bailey Xiang had sacrificed. However, the 2 silver corpses seemed to be fine, and were not affected at all. They turned over and continued to rush towards Bailey Xiang, with a crazy posture of fearlessness and fighting to the death. Bailey Xiang suddenly felt a headache. Although he could block the approach of the 2 silver corpses with his second-grade jade hammer, and there was a shield formed by the jade talisman outside, his safety did not need to be worried for the time being, but he needed to control the jade hammer and the flying knife while trying to cast spells. This was quite beyond his ability for him who was seriously injured. In this way, he was directly restrained by the 2 silver corpses. As expected, before Bailey Xiang could make other responses, Wei Hong had already cast a spell successfully. 2 thick green vines like dragons broke out of the ground and then whipped Bailey Xiang fiercely. Bang! The 2 dragon green vines whipped the golden shield, making a dull sound and causing some ripples in the golden shield, but it was not enough to break the golden shield. However, Wei Hong's methods were naturally more than that. After he performed the dragon green vine technique, he immediately threw more than 10 talismans at Bailey Xiang, and at the same time, he moved his body and rushed towards Bailey Xiang. Facing such an attack, Bailey Xiang's face changed, but at this time he was distracted by the 2 silver corpses and had no way to respond effectively. He could only watch the various attacks fall on the golden shield. Boom! Puff! Among the more than 10 talismans, in addition to the Sky Spear talisman and the Thousand Blades talisman, Wei Hong also mixed in 2 self-destruct talismans. The dense short blades, 2 giant war spears and fierce flames bombarded the golden shield at the same time, instantly setting off a thunderous noise, and waves of terrible fluctuations also rippled out. However, the golden shield formed by the jade talisman seemed extremely stable. Even in the face of such a terrible attack, it only shook violently a few times, and the golden light dimmed a little, but there was no sign of breaking. Seeing this scene, Bailey Xiang immediately put his mind at ease, and then looked at Wei Hong with a sneer on his face, his eyes full of disdain and sneer. Wei Hong didn't care about these. He flashed in front of the golden shield, raised his right hand and slashed it fiercely in front of him. A clear and misty sword light about 10 feet long immediately extended from his palm, and exuded a trace of extremely sharp breath. Puff! The azure sword slashed at the golden shield, just like a red-hot iron dipped directly into cold water. It instantly erupted with an extremely strong reaction, and the golden shield shook violently, and was even cut into an inch by the azure sword. However, in the face of such an attack, the golden shield still held up, and did not break at all. Instead, the golden light flashed continuously, and even the azure sword light slowly disappeared under the flashing of the golden light. Wei Hong's face changed slightly, and only then did he truly see how strong this golden shield was. Haha, don't waste your efforts. This is the life-saving jade talisman given by my master himself. How can a foundation-building cultivator like you break it? Bailey Xiang saw Wei Hong's face change slightly, and immediately laughed wildly. At this moment, his heart was much more stable. Since Wei Hong could not break the golden shield, he could at least be invincible. It's a pity that I only set up an illusion array to conceal the breath. If it was another attack array, how could I allow this person to humiliate me like this? Bailey Xiang thought bitterly in his heart, and his eyes looking at Wei Hong were full of murderous intent. He had completely remembered the name Wang Meng, and decided to use the resources of his master to find this person immediately after returning to the Immortal City. As long as he found this person, he would definitely make him die in order to avenge the humiliation and coercion today. However, Bailey Zhang didn't know at this time that this face was not Wei Hong's true appearance at all. He was naturally not afraid of Bailey Zhang's investigation. If he knew what Bailey Zhang was thinking, he would laugh endlessly. Looking at the golden shield in front of him that looked like a tortoise shell, and hearing Bailey Zhang's sarcastic laughter, Wei Hong's face did not change at all, but was as calm as ever. Oh? Really? Then I really want to try it. Wei Hong smiled coldly with a calm face, and actually retreated a long distance. The next moment, under Bailey Zhang's disdainful gaze, he immediately made hand gestures and muttered something. At this time, Bailey Zhang felt something was wrong. He suddenly realized that in the air that he could not see, there seemed to be a terrifying energy condensed, and this energy was still accumulating power. How is this possible? What on earth is that? Bailey Zhang's face changed drastically, and his confidence began to waver instantly. He immediately raised his head and stared at the sky, but he did not find anything. At this time, Wei Hong, who was more than 10 feet away, coldly spat out a word: fall. Rumble. Crack. In an instant, bursts of thunder and lightning suddenly sounded above their heads. The next moment, thunders fell down one after another. Puff. The illusion array set up by Bailey Zhang had no obstacles and was directly shattered by thunder. It was not until then that Bailey Zhang truly understood what he had just sensed. It was clearly a series of blue lightning bolts as big as a bowl. After the formation he had set up was broken, he looked up and saw that the sky was already covered with dark clouds, and there were lightning and thunder in the dark clouds. At this time, blue lightning bolts were constantly falling from the sky. Bang, bang, bang. The blue lightning bolts hit the golden shield, and instantly made a series of violent muffled sounds. The original extremely solid golden shield began to vibrate rapidly under the bombardment of countless blue lightning bolts, and the golden light on the surface was slowly dimming at a speed visible to the naked eye. This is also a formation. Bailey Zhang was quite stunned at this time. He didn't expect Wei Hong to set up a more terrifying offensive formation in addition to the formation he had set up. Such a change was beyond his expectations. At this moment, Bailey Zhang's heart was no longer confident and arrogant. His face was already covered with dark clouds, and his hands were clenched tightly. Although he didn't know what kind of formation the formation outside was, he could feel the horror of the blue thunder. If it weren't for the golden shield, he would definitely not be able to withstand the blue thunder alone. However, under the bombardment of the blue thunder, the golden shield that he relied on for defense began to become shaky. Such a situation also made Bailey Zhang panic for the first time. Chapter 824 Talisman, Golden Giant Sword. Bailey Zhang's eyes almost spit fire, but he felt a little helpless. Obviously, Wei Hong seemed to be very well prepared. If he had not been injured, it would not be difficult for him to break the situation with his means and strength. At the very least, he would not be trapped to death on the spot, and he could even fight or leave as he pleased. But Bailey Zhang was seriously injured now, and he could not exert half of his strength. The opponent also set up such a terrifying formation, which made Bailey Zhang understand that it was impossible to retreat safely today. Thinking of this, Bailey Zhang's eyes immediately became fierce. He took a deep breath, took back the jade hammer and ignored the two silver corpses. Anyway, at this time, countless green thunders kept bombarding, and the two silver corpses did not dare to approach. Bailey Zhang's face suddenly became solemn and serious. He immediately took out a palm-sized silver talisman from his storage bag. There was a small golden sword engraved on this talisman, which seemed quite smart. When this talisman was just taken out, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth seemed to be attracted to it, which seemed very extraordinary. Wei Hong also saw Bailey Zhang's actions, and his face became solemn and serious. Because he understood that something that Bailey Zhang treated so carefully was definitely not a simple thing, and it might even pose a fatal threat to him. Bailey Zhang held the silver talisman in both hands, first looked at Wei Hong expressionlessly, then bit his tongue, and sprayed a mouthful of blood directly at the silver talisman in his hand. The blood sprayed on the silver talisman and was instantly absorbed by the silver talisman. The next moment, the spiritual power in Bailey Zhang's body flowed into the silver talisman like water, making the golden sword on the silver talisman instantly become extremely agile, and suddenly broke away from the talisman, turning into a golden flying sword more than 3 feet long. After the golden flying sword appeared, it actually exuded an extremely terrifying aura, and the flying sword pointed at Wei Hong from a distance, and the aura also locked him tightly. Talisman treasure. Wei Hong couldn't help but change his face at this time, and his body tensed up instantly. He didn't expect that Bailey Zhang's trump card was such a terrible thing as a talisman treasure. The so-called talisman treasure is actually a very special and extremely rare talisman. It's just because the talisman treasure contains part of the power of the real magic weapon. This is a treasure made by cultivators above the Jinden stage, who use a special method to seal part of the power of their own magic weapon into the talisman. Making such a talisman requires sacrificing part of the power of their own magic weapon, and it often takes several years or even more than 10 years to make a talisman. After it is made, it also needs to be nurtured for a long time before the power of the magic weapon can be restored. In this way, the preciousness of this talisman can be imagined. If there is no powerful master in background, ordinary cultivators may not even have heard of what a talisman is. The power of the talisman is also closely related to the cultivation of the maker. Take the Yuanying stage cultivator and the Jinden stage cultivator as an example. The power of the talismans they made is naturally very different, which is simply incomparable. Generally speaking, the talisman can exert 1/10 to 1/5 of the power of the original magic weapon. Although the proportion of 1/10 seems extremely low, for the foundation building cultivator, this will also be a kind of terror that cannot be faced directly. Even the cultivation at the peak of the foundation building stage cannot withstand the attack of a talisman. Moreover, talismans are often consumable treasures that can be used multiple times. With such a treasure in hand, one can definitely sweep away the same level in the foundation building period, and can even resist 1 or 2 when facing a cultivator in the early stage of the golden elixir. This is why Wei Hong's face changed drastically after recognizing the talisman. But before he could react, the golden flying sword flew straight towards him with a whoosh. The speed at that moment made Wei Hong completely unable to react. The golden flying sword was wrapped in a terrifying momentum, and in the blink of an eye it directly split Wei Hong in half. Seeing this scene, although Bailey Zhang's face was extremely pale, he still couldn't help laughing triumphantly. Haha, a small foundation building cultivator, it is your honor to die under the talisman given by the master, haha. Bailey Zhang felt extremely happy in his heart, and his mind was also relaxed a lot. It takes a lot of spiritual power to activate the talisman, not to mention that he is still seriously injured. It is good enough to be able to activate it once. The spiritual power in his body is even close to exhaustion, so the talisman seals the golden flying sword again after exerting its power. But at this time, Bailey Zhang suddenly realized that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong for a while. At this time, he found that Wei Hong's body, which was split in half, did not bleed at all, which seemed very strange. The next moment, there was a bang, and the 2 halves of the body suddenly turned into 2 pieces of wood that were split in half, and Wei Hong disappeared. What? Bailey Zhang's face changed suddenly, and his eyes almost popped out of his sockets. Such a scene not only exceeded his expectations, but also broke his cognition. Bailey Zhang never thought that someone could escape the attack of the talisman. Such a weird thing made Bailey Zhang shocked. He immediately scanned the surroundings with a panicked look, trying to find Wei Hong's figure. At this time, Bailey Zhang could not help but see that Wei Hong had used some kind of substitute technique to avoid Fu Bao's killing move, but he was extremely uneasy about where Wei Hong was hiding now. In addition, the golden shield had been constantly bombarded by the blue thunder, and it was already shaky at this time, as if it would be completely shattered in the next breath. At this time, a cold voice suddenly came from Bailey Zhang's left. Haha, you are worthy of being the disciple of Kangshan's Henrun. You actually have such a precious thing as Fu Bao. Today, Wang almost fell. Very good, then I don't need to hold back anymore. Wei Hong slowly walked out from behind a big tree. His face was slightly pale, and his eyes were filled with strong cold murderous intent. In his hand, a Wanhan banner filled with yin qi was fluttering. Although he knew that Bailey Zhang could not activate the Fu Bao again in his current state, he still chose to take out the Wanhan banner for the sake of caution and for a quick victory. As long as he broke the golden shield, Bailey Zhang would be allowed to be slaughtered in his eyes. After seeing Wei Hong's figure reappear, and seeing that he was holding such a terrifying-looking banner in his hand, Bailey Zion could no longer control the horror on his face. He couldn't help but grit his teeth and asked, "You? Who are you?" Chapter 825, Determined to Win. At this moment, Bailey Zion was as horrified as if he had seen a ghost. He never expected that Wei Hong could avoid the killing blow of Fu Bao, and even had a trump card that he had not used yet. Doesn't this mean that even if he was in his prime, he might not be able to stop Wei Hong? Thinking of this, Bailey Ziyang's face turned as dark as the bottom of a pot, and he found it even more difficult to accept this fact. He didn't expect that there would be such a terrible opponent in the same level. Especially when he saw the One-Han banner filled with yin energy in Wei Hong's hand, he knew that Wei Hong was not a simple person. When he thought of his current state, Bailey Ziyang's heart immediately sank. As Wei Hong walked out slowly, he said coldly, "It doesn't matter who I am. Taoist friend, you don't have to think about seeking revenge on me after you get out. If you don't die today, I will be confident to kill you again next time we meet. Now I only ask one question, will you hand over the kindling Bodhi fruit?" After saying that, Wei Hong's footsteps stomped down heavily, as if stepping on Bailey Ziyang's heart, making him unable to help but his eyelids twitch wildly, and his heart skipped a beat. Bailey Ziyang understood that Wei Hong was issuing a final ultimatum. If he still didn't know what was going on, or still wanted to keep the kindling Bodhi fruit, then Wei Hong would definitely use the power of thunder, and he would be in a state that would make it difficult for him to compete with Wei Hong. After understanding this, Bailey Ziyang did not show anger, but remained silent, but his eyes were filled with extreme resentment and murderous intent, and the whole person suddenly became terrifyingly calm. But Wei Hong turned a blind eye to this, and even cared about Bailey Ziyang's reaction. He just said with a crazy and cold smile, "Dao Bailey, I know you still have a way to save your life that you haven't used yet, but don't forget how I found this place. I am determined to get that kindling Bodhi fruit. If I can't get it today, I will chase you to death and never give up until I achieve my goal. No matter where Dao escapes to, I will follow you. I hope Dao will think it over carefully." After saying this, Bailey Ziyang, who had originally regained his composure, couldn't help but change his face suddenly, and his eyes revealed a terrifying light, staring at Wei Hong. Originally, Bailey Ziyang did intend to retreat first. He still had a way to save his life, and he also had the secret escape technique of blood shadow escape. It was naturally impossible for Wei Hong to keep him. But Wei Hong's words just now completely shattered his plan and crushed the slightest bit of luck in his heart. How could he forget the shock and panic he felt when he saw Wei Hong suddenly break into the formation before? Bailey Ziyang still couldn't figure out how Wei Hong found him, but he knew that Wei Hong's words were definitely not alarmist, because he had already seen that the other party was indeed the kind of person who would not give up until he achieved his goal. Even though he knew that Wei Hong was clearly threatening him, Bailey Ziyang still had to consider the consequences. No matter how angry and resentful he was now, he had to swallow his anger for the time being. In particular, Bailey Ziyang also noticed that the golden shield above his head had already been shaky and obviously could not hold on for much longer. Therefore, Bailey Ziyang had to make a decision immediately. After all kinds of thoughts turned wildly in his mind, Bailey Ziyang suddenly gritted his teeth and growled, "Okay, fellow Taoist, you have a trick. Today, I, Bailey Ziyang, have failed. I won't say any more nonsense. I'll give you the things, but if you dare to catch up with me again, don't blame me for not stopping until you die." After that, Bailey Ziyang decisively threw down the jade box containing the kindling Bodhi fruit, then bit his tongue and spit out a mouthful of blood. The blood turned into blood mist before it hit the ground, completely wrapping Bailey Ziyang up. Then he stretched out his hand and took back all the spiritual weapons he had released. The next moment, Bailey Ziyang looked deeply at Wei Hong. At this time, he had already accepted the fact that he had lost the battle. He just wanted to deeply imprint Wei Hong's appearance in his mind. Buzz! The blood mist wrapped Bailey Ziyang and fled away instantly. Crack! At this time, the golden shield finally couldn't hold on and was completely blasted by the blue thunder, and then countless thunders struck down. If Bailey Ziyang had not used the blood shadow escape to escape decisively, he would have been covered by countless thunderbolts in the next breath. If that happened, Bailey Ziyang would have been severely beaten even if he didn't die. As expected of a genius from the inner sect of the Immortal City, he is indeed decisive and knows how to make choices. Wei Hong couldn't help but sigh at this time. Even he had to admit that Bailey Ziyang was indeed a genius. After knowing that things were impossible, His decisions and actions were extremely decisive, without any hesitation. Even the kindling Bodhi fruit, a natural treasure, was thrown away without any reluctance or nostalgia, because Bailey Xiang himself knew very well that if he didn't hand over the kindling Bodhi fruit, he would be chased by Wei Hong even if he escaped. The most important thing was that even though he had decided to escape, Bailey Xiang didn't forget to play a trick on Wei Hong before leaving, because the jade box he threw away was now exposed to the Cyan Thunderbolt. Once the green thunderbolts hit directly, the jade box and the spiritual fruit inside would naturally be shattered. Bailey Xiang had obviously anticipated that the golden shield could no longer support it, so he threw the jade box directly at his feet. Fortunately, Wei Hong had been fully prepared for Bailey Xiang's counterattack, so he immediately used the Jinitan sword, allowing the sword light of the Jinitan sword to instantly carry the jade box out of the range of the thunderbolt, and then return to his hand. Tisk, you didn't forget to use a dirty trick before leaving, you are really petty. After getting the jade box, Wei Hong smiled and shook his head. The spiritual fruit was already in hand, which made him feel much happier. Although he hadn't opened the jade box yet, Wei Hong was not worried that Bailey Xiang would dare to use fakes to fool him. Because people like Bailey Xiang must be very arrogant. He can use dirty tricks, but he disdains to do despicable things, and even doing so will bring him more trouble, so people like Bailey Xiang will never do this. As expected, when Wei Hong gently opened the jade box, he saw the kindling Bodhi fruit lying quietly in the jade box, emitting a very strong vitality. I finally got it. It's worth it for me to take a huge risk to defend the inner door Xianjiao of the Immortal City. Fortunately, the harvest is good. Wei Hong smiled happily, and was obviously very satisfied with his harvest. Being able to force the other party to hand over the spiritual fruit without killing Bailey Xiang is the best result. Moreover, Wei Hong could also vaguely sense that Bailey Xiang had a trace of fatal threat that made him extremely palpitating, which was the real reason why he didn't want to fight Bailey Xiang to the death. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.